presentations from various cell phone companies that want to put, or are suggesting, or asking us to put cell phone towers in our parks. And as the Parks and Rec Board, we have been charged by the Board of Commissioners to take a look at this, and there will be no decisions made tonight. This is purely informational, so we can understand what's going on, what they're offering, what the towers will look like, where they'll be located, et cetera. The way we'd like to run this is each company will have a 20-minute presentation, followed by 10 minutes of questions from the board, first of all. Then we'll open up to public participation for each company. Each company will come down on their own individually and then go back out of the meeting. We'll have 3 companies tonight. The first one will be Towers of PA, AT&T, and then CTI. And any public participation questions, please direct them directly to the presentation that was given, and we can try and stay on track. So Towers of PA is our first people. Please step up and present away.
Good evening. We're going to hand up some books, if we can, to start, booklets.
Great.
And then I'll...
No quiz.
And I guess I can probably talk while we're doing that. My name is Don Petrosa. I'm an attorney. I do zoning and land use work. And I have a fair amount of experience in this area with cell sites, both representing some of the cell carriers over the years and also representing municipalities when applications come before us. And I was actually on the zoning hearing board here for a number of years. So my client is Towers of PA, LLC, and they are proposing to lease from the township 3 sites, as you know, at the Willows, Fenimore Woods, and Ithan Valley. And the purpose would be for cell sites for wireless communications facilities. The principals in Towers of PA are Thomas and Michael Shine, who are here. They have a combined 32 years of experience in the wireless industry, and particularly in the siting of towers and locations for towers, and over 65 years combined experience in real estate development in general. They've been working with the township for actually a couple of years now on these sites. They've been actively negotiating with the township staff for about 18 months. And what is proposed is a 140-foot, it's actually a tree pole, or I think it's called a pine pole in the materials that you see. But it's 140 feet tall. It would be capable of supporting 4 carriers, each one of these, one at each park. And the equipment area is about 50 by 50, or roughly 2,500 square feet, which is fairly typical for these types of installations. And in one of the installations that Mike will discuss in detail, the equipment would actually be located in an existing building, which is nice. And cell service in all of these areas ranges from insufficient to almost non-existent. My house happens to back up to the Willows, and I can personally attest that in our house on Round Hill Road, there's virtually no cell service at all. And in accordance with the township's statement of considerations for review, Mike is going to do a presentation which includes the aesthetics and appearance of the sites. He's done some photo simulations, which were done with balloon tests at the various facilities. And in some cases, because it's so heavily wooded and it's a tree pole, you'll see that it's really actually kind of difficult to see it at all. And he also has a little to present on the levels of existing coverage, which is one of the other criteria that was set forth. So I'll let Mike introduce the rest of the folks that are here with us this evening. I know Ken Foster is here, who is an expert and can address any safety issues or concerns that you may have. And I know that Jim Kyle, the land planner, is also here, who did the balloon test in case there are any questions there. And we also have someone who did a drive test for to show levels of service. And with that, I'd like to call on Mike Shine, who will make the primary presentation.
Thanks.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. Let me just try and do this correctly. So I understand that you all have screens and you can see this as well, and this is a mirror image of what you have in the books that I've given each of you. So Don was reading from when he said statement of considerations. We had received an invitation from the administrator's office to come to tonight's meeting, and thank you again for having us at this special meeting. And you know, having grown up in the area and having my family still live in the area, I know the pride and the sensitive nature that goes into the surrounding, or the parks and the surrounding properties in Radnor Township. I happen to live in the Princeton, New Jersey area, and I find a lot of the same traits there that I grew up with here, although the sledding's not as good as it is at the Willows. So maybe we can make that part of the consideration. Having said that, we were asked to come tonight and present to you a conceptual idea of what a typical cell site would look like at each of the three proposed parks, those being Fenimore Woods, Ithan Valley, and the Willows. We have spoken with the administrator and Ms. Cohen, the director of Parks and Rec. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this up on your screen for you. Regarding the ideas that we have to locate a 140-foot monopine cell tower at each of those park locations. At Fenimore Woods, we have the benefit of the existing building, which we have briefly spoken of to rehabilitate. It's in some serious need of rehabilitation. It's a gorgeous building. If you haven't been there, I would encourage you to go. So we've spoken about rehabilitating that building and utilizing the inside of that building for the equipment so that people that utilize this park and travel up and down Eagle Road and are at Eastern and Cabrini don't have to see some of the equipment, and we have the benefit of natural screening at the other two locations that we can utilize to hide that equipment. So what we would like to do at Fenimore is to utilize that existing building on the northeast corner of the property, and let me just give you a bigger view here. Locate the pole within 15 feet of the side, and this is what it would look like conceptually in an elevation drawing. With the building, in this case, on the west, so this view would be from the north. There are a lot of standing trees that a monopine would fit in with as you travel through this area. Not as many as in the other two locations, but there are some very tall and prominent oaks, and we believe that, skipping to the photo simulations that we prepared for this location, this is an overall view. We were only able to capture a 140-foot tall, 5-foot in diameter red balloon in these four locations, driving the area, driving the local roads. And these are located in the back of your booklet. You can see in this view that the top of the monopine would be in this location right here, and it's virtually not visible. And in this view, which is from the eastern soccer fields, it does stick above the trees. It is more prominent here. And and this is from one of the eastern dormitory parking lots directly east of the proposed location. And it is somewhat visible here, a little bit more prominent than the surrounding oaks. So I want to just stop there talking about the individual site locations and tell you why these 3 locations have been chosen and explain to you what we're going for here. Towers of PA, as Don said, thank you, Don, for your nice introduction, is a company that's owned by my father, Tom, and I. We develop towers. We hold on to towers for a period of time and then lease them out to the cell phone companies. We are not a cell phone carrier. We're not an AT&T or Verizon. Wish we were, but we're not. We're locally based. We have quite a bit of local experience in both cell towers and in general real estate development. Our CVs are attached for you to evaluate. And what we've done is made an effort in the first part of your binder to show you each of the park locations and the coverage surrounding those locations that exist today. That coverage in the eyes of a cell phone company, it's called, it's the RF section. It's the very first tab in your booklet. That survey was conducted by Amin Communications. Damien, Amin Senior and Junior are with us tonight. They can talk about what went into the drive test if you're interested. We can have them come up and answer some of your questions. And they've been able to drive a 1 mile radius around each of these proposed locations. And I have AT&T up on the screen here just as an example to show you the different levels of coverage that currently exist surrounding the proposed location. We've included maps for AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. We had some problems collecting data for Sprint, so we were unable to include their existing coverage, but we assume it to be similar to what the other 3 carriers' coverage currently is at all 3 locations, where current coverage is substandard and deficient in many locations. We'd like you to consider that these maps are very hard to understand. Even in the industry, they're hard to understand. And we are not RF experts, but Mr. Amin is, and he and his team have been able to identify the different levels of coverage that exist for call quality, data speeds, and the new 4G, soon to be 5G within 5 years, is the rumor on the street. So there'll be new and wonderful faster speeds for your cell phone to process your Safari or whatever your email you're looking at. I'm kind of getting off point, but these maps help us identify the strength of the coverage at each of these locations as a vehicle would travel through each area. There are, just referring back to the menu that I received from the administrator's office.
Can I ask a quick question?
You certainly may.
With these maps you're showing, I think they were on pages 7, 8, and 9 of your presentation.
Yes?
The ranges at the top are better versus, I'm looking at the signal key. I guess
Which-
the colors that towards the top are considered higher or better connectivity, and the ones below, sort of towards the
They
bottom.
are, and since
Okay.
we're looking at Fenimore here, as you know, the terrain very steeply increases in that area. So the next cell site to the north is at the intersection of Upper Gulf and Fletcher Roads.
Okay.
And then to the west is It's actually part of what's called a DAS system, a distributed antenna system, and there is an antenna for that on North Wayne Avenue, just south of Upper Gulf Road. So that provides additional coverage, which is why as you travel further to the north in this location, your coverage actually increases. So, and then leaving Fenimore, going to the south, you have sites in downtown Wayne along Lancaster Avenue. To the east, you would have some locations at the Radnor Valley Corporate Center, or Radnor Corporate Center. I'm not sure what it's called these days.
Michael, Michael, if I may, do you mind? Are you going to take
go
some
ahead.
questions?
I don't mind at all.
Thank you. It's Michael, right? If you don't mind.
Whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine.
You used the term monopine.
Yes.
Okay. Grant, I understand coverage, and we're worried about that, and I know the people who have cell phones and so on like coverage. As a member of the Parks and Rec, I'm interested in aesthetics and things such as safety and so on. We can talk about coverage later on. Monopine, and I know my colleagues may get upset with me, but I refer often back to the intersection of the Blue Route and I-95 coming in when I'm going off on the Blue Route coming south. Is that a monopine tower I see there? And are there some alternatives to that that we could look at, or why are you focusing in on the monopine?
I'm actually not familiar with that location, Mr. Gillen.
That's just a regular monopole there. That's not a tree.
Fasano? Fasano
It looks
Brothers?
like a tree to me, and I guess, you know, it looks like a tinsel tree. You know, I'm being very candid. Now,
If you come up a little bit, come up the Blue Route, there's one at the Springhaven Country Club, and there's another one at the Wallingford Fine Arts Center that are two examples of very good tree poles. Granted, there are some that are bad. They look particularly bad when there's just one, and there's
Yes.
nothing around it. They look pretty good when they're in a wooded area. That's the best.
and understand it, Fenimore Woods and so on, we have the benefit of nice tree coverage at this point, but God forbid something happens and it goes, then we're stuck with just this monopine sitting there. That aesthetically is, I question. Are there other alternatives other than that in putting cell phone
There
towers in?
are.
That's what I was interested in.
Well, there's something like we have behind the Township building here, which is called a self-support structure. You can't really disguise that. That's three-sided, four-sided, steel, looks like an erector set. You can't really disguise that. There are guide towers, which have guide wires similar, much smaller than the ones in Roxborough, the television antennas that we've all lived with
I've heard
for
people
years.
referencing that if I'm on the turnpike heading towards New Jersey, there's some cell phone towers there that are no?
There are actually. There is a monopine at 476 and 276. If you come north on 476 and you get on the turnpike going east, there's one right there on the southbound side. But unless you're looking for it, you'll never see it because it's properly done. If you continue east, as you go past the Willow Grove exit, there are two monopines, but they sit, one sits surrounded, there are some trees surrounding it, but it's still out in the open. And then just a little bit further, another mile or so past that one, there's one that sits right in the middle of a field. So you just have a parking lot and a field and some low industrial buildings, and then there's a monopine right there.
This is education for me also.
Sure.
We talk about a monopine. Are there other alternatives out there? Somebody else may come and say, well, rather than a monopine, why don't you guys look at this or this?
There really are no, there's a cactus. I'm not trying to be
No, I know.
flip,
Well, there's
you
one
know,
that looks like a flagpole. What about that? You can make a big flagpole out of
you
it.
make a big flagpole that's 6 feet in diameter and is white, and it would not blend in with a treed landscape such as we have at each of these locations.
But that's
so-
an option.
It is an option.
I think that's what
it limits.
what you're
Yeah,
trying to
I'm looking at
understand is what are the options?
It limits our ability to add additional tenants to the tower, which would mean then that the township could potentially receive less income under the lease agreement, because the antennas in that case have to be installed on the interior of the tower, whereas with a monopine or any other tower structure, they could be installed on the outside, and you have a little bit more flexibility. That is an option, though.
Can I ask you about, so your role, like you said, you're not a carrier, so you would then lease the use of the tower to the different carriers whoever may be interested in using it here.
Yes,
Is that accurate?
that's
Is that
correct.
done on a year-to-year basis? What's the usual term of those deals?
Our terms are usually 5 years with multiple 5-year renewal options and
Okay.
increases through those terms.
Is there a limit on how many carriers can be, I guess, sort of leased to a particular tower?
It's as many as you design it for.
Okay.
In this case, we're going to design it for the 4 major carriers because the 4 major carriers over the past few years have absorbed all of the 3 minor carriers, those being Clearwire is now part of Sprint. Metro PCS is now part of T-Mobile. And Cricket, through Leap Communications, is now part of AT&T. So we don't expect any additional carriers at this time.
Okay.
So we're designing it for the 4 major carriers currently in the market.
Is there any possible, that's a bad question. Is there, the way you're designing it, is it to sort of, I want to make sure that if the design you're proposing isn't something that in 4 years is all of a sudden going to be obsolete because of, I don't know what they would come up with cell phone data or whatnot, or capacity, I guess, is what I'm looking for. I mean, is there any way to sort of hedge against that?
Well, each of these sites is designed for coverage, to provide coverage in areas that isn't currently served by reliable coverage.
Okay.
And that would be the objective of the carrier.
Okay.
Our objective is to provide a structure that they can locate their antennas on. So if they're providing coverage, and as time goes on, then they have to add capacity to that coverage, that just means that they're going to keep adding equipment inside their equipment building or equipment cabinets that are there to provide additional capacity. Once capacity is matched out, then we have to explore other options on the tower to maybe locate some additional antennas, or another tower has to be built between this tower here in this location and wherever the next location is.
And you would have to come in front of us again, I would assume, for additional
We
antennas.
would. Well, additional antennas, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then now, who's the first call? If there's also an issue here, let's say a member of the township staff sees, I don't know, something dangling from the tower, who do they call? They call the carrier?
We'll have signs posted on the tower.
Is it to you all?
It would be to me, but pardon me, each of the carriers would also have signs posted on the fence and on their equipment, so people would know who had what there. There would be an emergency contact number that would not only be on file at the location, but here in the office.
Okay.
May I ask, what's the estimated useful life of the monopine tower that you're proposing?
That's a very good question. It's, it would survive the term of any lease agreement that would be negotiated with the township.
Okay.
Okay.
In terms of maintenance requirements to maintain the aesthetic appearance, what kinds of activities and what kinds of intervals are involved?
Your ordinance provides that we have to maintain the tower in the condition that exists the day that it goes into operation. So normal maintenance on the tower, extraordinary maintenance on the pine branches or the bark, that's all part of the maintenance part of the ordinance and also of the lease agreement that we're proposing to sign with the township.
Our area was hit with some pretty nasty weather last winter, and we lost a lot of trees that many of us never expected to see horizontal. What kind of weather resistance and ability to withstand those kinds of storms does the tower you're providing or proposing provide?
The tower is made out of steel. It's designed to resist a certain wind loading. That was a unique event that happened, and I'm not trying to discount it, having been in similar situations over the past few years ourselves. But the foundation of the tower itself, they are all designed to resist extreme conditions of wind and ice.
Mike, could you take a minute to really touch on the implications for installing these towers in the 3 locations? We touched on it quickly, What I'm talking about is when you move forward to, if you get the go-ahead to install them, what's going to happen? What do you envision happening at the Willows with the use of that property while it's being installed, and also further on, implications for people using that facility after the tower's in there, and also at Fenimore Woods and Eichen? If you can do that real quickly.
Yeah,
it
no
would help
problem. Let
us.
me just get to the end here, and we'll go backwards.
Are we asking too many questions? Are we
Not at all.
interrupting your presentation? 'Cause
I
we can-
love questions.
We can hold some of, I have a bunch of questions myself,
Yeah.
so, and along those lines.
I just want to make sure I fit within your time frame. So I really don't mind questions at all. So it's hard to see here. Let me blow this up. So at the Willows, this is the, can you see my little
Yep.
hand here? So this is the rear parking lot on the western edge of the property. This is the main access drive that comes up and travels behind the mansion. And we are proposing to place the monopine actually behind and in the woods that is on the Skunk Hollow Park portion of the park, utilizing the existing compost access road, traveling along the tree line, and then there is a walking path in approximately this location here that could be utilized to physically get to the tower itself. At this location and at Eichen Valley, we're proposing a 50 by 50 fenced compound with surrounding landscaping per the ordinance, with the monopole and all of the equipment installed inside of that 50 by 50 area. Okay so far? We expect that construction here would take approximately 10 weeks. We would bring in our own utilities. There is a utility pole at the dumpsters behind the Willows that we would like to pull power off of and run power overhead back to the tower location to provide power for all of the carriers. We would also utilize that same pole run for any telco that would be necessary to the equipment, because each of the carriers, as you'll hear later, still uses fiber optic to have their equipment communicate with a central switch and for security purposes. This is the most difficult site because of the pristine nature of the Willows and of the mansion, and the fact that you use this park for many different things. The mansion is rented out for functions, weddings, parties, Christmas parties. So we're trying to be as least obtrusive here as we can. We'll work with a local arborist and your tree department, your public works department through Mr. Norsini and his team to minimize the impact on any trees in this location. But we've chosen an area here that it has to be confirmed, but we've chosen an area here where there's some opening in the tree canopy and the tree cover, so that we're not going to have much of an impact on the existing tree infrastructure. Any questions about the Willows?
How much clearing, oh, sorry.
You're going to pull power from overhead from
There's an
from where is that?
There's an existing overhead line right in about this location right here. It comes up through this tree line here. Actually, I'm sorry. It comes up through here, all the way from Darby Paley Road.
Is that currently above ground, that line?
Yes, yeah, it's overhead. Ultimately, that decision, your input weighs a lot into that decision, but it's also going to be PICO and what they're going to tell us that they need to see in that area.
May I ask, how much clearing would you expect in a site like this that looks dense, certainly from the aerial view?
Ma'am, unless we go out there and do construction drawings, which we're not prepared to do yet, I can't fully answer your question. We chose the location, the proposed location at this site based upon the existing tree canopy and the existing ground cover, so that we weren't having a maximum impact on the existing trees in that area.
Okay, but what if we had asked you to go down to like where, I'm just saying, like the mulch piles, so you don't have to clear out any trees?
Down
It
in
might be
here?
easier for you. Do you have to go where you're proposing, or can we dictate where we want you to put the
No,
towers?
you can dictate that totally, as long as I can make up the elevation and clear the tops of the trees, which I am doing here
How far do you have to clear the tops of the trees?
by at least 40 feet, because I have 4 carriers. So when we have a tower, if you can think of this as a tower, 140 feet, and you go down 10 feet, there's your next tenant, 120 feet and 110 feet. So the tops of my trees ideally should be at 100 feet to allow for future growth and
Tops of the surrounding trees, you mean?
tops of the surrounding trees.
So could you go back to the picture you were showing of what it would look like in Fenimore Woods?
From which location?
From like I guess from the parking lot of Eastern or something like that. I just want to see, like this
This one?
yeah. Like that tree to me does not look like it's 40 feet above the rest of them. Is that?
Well, we're
would
a
you
certain
agree with that?
distance away.
What's the angle?
It's the angle.
Well, it should be even be higher then, right?
Not
If you're looking
necessarily,
up
no,
on
the
it.
angle would decrease. Let me just show you where that picture was taken
Even
from.
higher, as you're looking up at it.
This is a good half a mile away. This view here would be further and at a lower elevation.
All right, so in Fenimore, you're proposing to rehab that building. Are you rehabbing the building just for your own equipment, or could you put some bathrooms in there for us? Do you need the entire?
Thank you for asking that question, because this is actually a very important part of the negotiation that we've had with the administration. At each of the locations, we're proposing to dedicate a separate escrow account for use by the Park and Rec Board in the amount of $40,000 per location to be utilized by the Park and Rec Board for each of these parks. So it's $120,000 total. Also, at Fenimore Woods, the discussions have centered around the fact that these bathrooms are outdated, but more importantly, they're uphill and far away from the pavilion, which is what the park is mainly utilized for. We're proposing an additional $10,000 for this park only to be utilized towards a green restroom. And I'd like to hand these out to you right now. This is a summary of our negotiated business terms for each location. What you'll see in here is that we'd like to enter into a
Thank you.
5-year lease with the township for each location. And when we pull a building permit for each location, for that location, we will prepay the first 5 years' worth of rent for that location. So if we were to pull a building permit for the Fenimore Woods location, you would get the first 5 years' worth of rent up front, plus the $40,000 in escrow for that park only, plus the additional $10,000 for that park.
Gotcha.
But that additional 10 must be used for the green restroom.
Right. One of my other questions was, once the tower's in, you've got 4 companies going in to do maintenance and things. How often are they in there? What do they bring back in there? Are they bringing big trucks, small trucks? Are they there once a month? What's the normal
It's a Ford
maintenance
Escape
period?
or a small van, and it's every 4 to 6 weeks. Some of the carriers utilize prefabricated concrete shelters. Technician will pull up, he'll park in a designated parking space. He'll go in, in the case of a shelter, he'll go into his shelter. He'll be totally secure in there, self-contained unit. He'll plug his computer in, do whatever diagnostic work he needs to do at that location. He'll unplug, the lights are on a timer, he'll lock the door, get back in his car, and he leaves. There's no water requirement, there's no sewer requirement, nobody will be here on a daily basis. The most invasive time is during construction.
Okay.
So Sean, can I take that point a little bit further, just so I understand the
Sure.
maintenance side of it? Your company is responsible to maintain the tower and the grounds around that tower.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then each individual cell company that you sublease space to at the top, they're responsible for the equipment in the building or at the location that they own. As who's responsible for their location at the top of the tower?
They're beholden to us, and we're to you, as we
Okay.
are to you.
And
Okay.
how often are you in there as well? So we got 5 companies now going in. So how often you go in?
Not as often as they do.
Yeah. So I guess then my question
We
is,
go in about every 4 to 6 months.
if there's a problem,
Yes,
we call you.
you do.
We don't call one of your tenants.
No, you call us, we go figure out what the problem is.
Figure out the problem
We get
is,
somebody
whether it's
out there
something
right
you
away.
handle it or
Yeah.
that it's up to them to handle.
They may already be there because of that
They
fiber
may
optic
know it,
connection.
right.
They're receiving a bad signal or a default or something like that. They may have already dispatched the
Right,
technician in
right.
to fix the problem.
But like in Susan's case, if we have an ice storm and 15 of the 80 branches get ripped off
That's
in
me.
that storm, that's up to you to resolve that
Mm-hmm.
problem.
That's correct.
And what recourse do we have to ensure that problem is resolved in a,
Well, we're obligated
Due
to you under
process.
our lease agreement to make sure that we maintain the property in a certain,
I'll be
Step.
negotiated in the lease document.
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it your intention under your proposal to start construction of all 3 at once? Is that what you would like to do? Or is it certain parks before others?
As we get carrier interest, we would start construction. We would file for a building permit and start construction.
If there was, let's say, a hypothetical here, there was only one park to choose from, okay? How would you rank the 3 parks here as in terms of ones you would want to install?
Which is the prime park?
Well, it's kind of a difficult question because from my viewpoint, I'd like all 3.
I understand, but
But to answer your question, I think Fenimore is the one that we would see the quickest movement on,
okay.
followed by the Willows, which has just bad coverage in general. If you've ever been there and tried to make a call or send a text message, it's virtually impossible. I know I sat out there when we did the balloon test and babysat the balloon to make sure it didn't fly away and wind up in Nova Scotia. So it's probably Fenimore, followed by the Willows, and then Ithan Valley.
Could you explain how would the installation of a tower at any of these sites affect, I guess, we've heard concerns from Township staff about communications, like emergency communications and things like that. Are you able to discuss how?
We're making a provision, and it's in the summary that I handed up to you. I realize that you haven't had a chance to review it yet, but we're making a provision to locate emergency services equipment on the tower at no charge.
Can you tell us, I don't think we've seen where Ithan Valley Tower is supposed to go?
So this is Ithan Valley Park along the Blue Route, south of Godfrey Road. I'm sorry, south of Clyde Road. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, where within the park is it going to be?
Okay, the park entrance comes in. It has a dual
Yep.
in and out.
Yep.
So if you came in the top entrance, there's a walking path that goes up the hill through
Yep.
the nature center up towards the pond, and we're proposing improving that walking path, using it for our purposes to get up to the location. So we're pretty much looking at the crest of the hill on the western side between the Blue Route and the walking path.
Okay.
If you happen to go to the park and you're standing in the parking lot, there's a very prominent dead tree. So we're looking to replace the dead tree with our monopine.
And how close to the wall of the Blue Route is that? is that location
It's over 200 feet
from the wall?
from the wall.
So it's
I don't think
closer.
there is a wall on that side.
Yeah, I think
Perhaps there is.
Yeah, there are walls on that
There's
side.
a wall on
up
that
there.
side?
Yeah,
Forgive me. So it's about 200 feet.
okay. And can you tell me about the existing cell tower structure at Clyde Road and Ithan Avenue?
That's a single-use wood pole structure utilized by AT&T. So if they were going to locate on our structure, they would have to decommission that site and move to ours. But by moving to ours, they would see improved and enhanced coverage because they would have a higher height.
Do you have any knowledge of the existing agreement between the Township and AT&T regarding that pole?
I do not.
And is that site an acceptable site for you to put your pole in?
No, it is not, because it's not accessible due to its location. It's blocked by a guardrail, and it does not have an existing curb cut so that you can pull into the site and safely work there.
No room there. They pull up along the side of the road.
Michael, you had thank you for providing in your report there something about the effects health-wise on, I think
Yes.
you used the terminology electromagnetic fields. Not that I'm going to read it all right now, but it does, to your knowledge, okay, not with your company, has any cell tower been removed because of negative implications on the health? You mentioned in here the person who wrote the report. It said the International Agency for Research on Cancer, blah, 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 is expected to review, and they expect that report out in 2006, 2007. You know, do you encounter that question from communities? And has anyone, to your knowledge, ever been asked to remove a cell tower because of the negative implications on the health of the community?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
None.
And Dr. Foster, who wrote that letter for us on our behalf to present to you tonight, is present with us here, if you'd like to ask him some questions.
Well, I was just wondering what he
That's fine.
references in here, a review of the cancer risks from, and they expect it in 2006, 2007. You know, I do know that people have some adverse feelings about living under high power lines coming across. You know, one doesn't want to live in those particular areas. I'm wondering if people are looking at the implications from cell towers.
From, Dr. Foster can come up and address that for you if you'd like.
Well,
I'd welcome
I know
it.
we're running
we-
on what we want other people to.
Yeah, we're-
But I think that's an important aspect.
We can make that
wanna
our
hear
last
from the
question if you'd
community,
like.
no?
Yeah, I know. I think it's a good question. If you want to limit your comments, we want to try and finish you up. We've already gone over our time, and we want to see if there's any public participation, specific questions for you guys before we thank you and move you on. So, Pat, question?
Just
I
to
get just to
clarify,
address, yeah,
to
that
clarify my
issue.
statement about a forthcoming 207 report, that must have crept in from the previous thing. The World Health Organization had a major report issued around 206 and 207, which discussed the health issue, and WHO is now preparing another major report, which will come out this next year. There's some open questions about whether long-term use of cell phones might be linked with brain cancer. These are people who use cell phones for years, and the evidence is ambiguous, but there's at least a glimmer of something that needs more investigation, even though WHO has not said that these phones actually cause disease. But the exposure you get from using a cell phone is much higher than that
Than
than you
living
would
close
receive.
to a tower.
Yes.
And would you say, Ken, that's because they're holding it next to their head versus something that's 140 feet in the air?
Correct. Now, there are exposure limits in the United States that are the FCC limits, and I couldn't calculate the exposure from this tower because right now there's nothing on it. But anybody who wants to install some towers on this will have to demonstrate that the public exposure to radio waves satisfies federal limits. And I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, but on a part-time basis, I've been a consultant on this issue, and I've analyzed hundreds of cell sites, and not a single one has led to public exposure, even as much as 1% of the FCC limits. The only case where there's been a legal issue relating to cell sites is sometimes people put antennas on rooftops in such a way that people can walk in front of them. And I believe it was Verizon in Philadelphia, I may be wrong with the company, has had to change some of their cell sites because the antennas were mounted back from the parapet so that somebody could walk in between the antenna and the parapet. But that, of course, has nothing to do with this site here. And there's been a constant level of public anxiety about this RF issue. And there are controversies that periodically erupt when a cell company puts a tower, say, in a school, and the public opposition builds up because of health concerns. But this is a matter of risk perception. The exposure levels are always very far below federal and international safety limits, and there's no indication that there's any kind of health problem, but people sometimes don't like the appearance of cell towers near schools. And I couldn't guarantee that there might not be a case or two around the country where carriers had to remove the cell towers because of public controversy, not because of any exposure that exceeds any kind of safety limit.
Thank you.
I could lecture like this for hours, but I probably not. I shouldn't.
Okay, any public participation, specific questions for this company? Come on up, Sarah.
Could you get to the
Can you do it at the microphone and here?
Sarah Pilling from Garrett Avenue. Could you bring up the location of the cell tower at the Willows?
The overall map, ma'am?
Yes.
And can I give you a microphone to speak into, one or the other?
We can share. I don't bite.
I don't either.
Let me know if this is good enough. for
No,
you.
that's good
I'll
enough.
move it over.
No. So you're proposing the location, I know exactly where it is, up in the woods behind the mansion.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you considered right here at the end of this row of trees, which would mean that you would not, I know the path you're talking about, which is right here. So when you go up into here, that is a major walking area. They go down and they go down to Darby Creek and they come around and they come up the path, the walkway, the road to the mulch pile, and then they come across this field and they go up into these woods again to go back to the parking lot. Have you considered this site at the end of this row of trees where you'd sort of be the anchor of it, but you would have a more open space to put your 50 by 50 pad and less of a distance to go on the roadway, if that's what you want to call it, up to there? Because here I'm assuming you're going to have to build a road to come across to get up this path, and the contract for the mansion is about to be signed, and our community garden, because I'm the coordinator of the community garden, is down here, but the lessee of the township, of the mansion, is going to have a garden right here, and you're going to cramp his style, and you're going to have to put in a road. And then we have stormwater management, and we have runoff, and so I'm just curious if you've considered this site down here.
Could you,
Nope.
could you put
Thinking
a,
about this for a long time.
Okay.
like, could you put a cursor on where she was pointing, because no one can see what
No
she was talking about, so.
She was talking about right here where you
Right.
mentioned earlier, Mr. Schwartz. And these are just proposed locations, nothing set in stone yet. I would consider this, but it is at a lower ground elevation, which may increase the ultimate height of the tower. I wouldn't rule it out, though. Okay?
It seems to me it would be easier for you, and it would be less of a potential conflict for these walking trails where they go back up that path, and I'll take the cursor is right, this is where the walking path is, that goes back up into the woods that circles behind the mansion that goes to the parking lot. So 50 by 50 in there is going to really be intrusive for your hikers, and that's a major thing, whereas the other,
Down here.
I mean, I realize it drops off a little bit.
I wouldn't
but-
rule it out, ma'am.
Okay, if
Okay.
you would just look at it.
Sure.
Thank you.
When we get to the final stage, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Mr. Shine, you said 140 feet. Is there a limit to how high the tower can be?
It can be designed, however high it's designed for. You have some limitations as you approach 200 feet with the type of steel and how it's reinforced, but that can all be compensated for in the structural design of the tower and the foundation.
Thank
All
you.
those documents would be part of our building permit filing as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jim Schneller, I frequent all the parks a lot. Thank you for your work. I'd ask also since Sarah brought that up, isn't there also right behind the Willows Mansion, right here, there's the highest elevation, and there doesn't seem to be private property there.
That's close to the property line, and the reason we're over here is because the funds that were used to acquire the Willows, we were told were somehow restricted by Green Acres and would prevent this type of installation, but not so in the Skunk Hollow parcel.
Really?
Yes.
Because I too
I think it's
frequent.
called Act 191, maybe?
I didn't know that. Green Acres, of course, is out of here, to my knowledge.
There's some type of conservation easement there, sir, which would prohibit us from going on the entire Willows parcel. You're close to the municipal border over here.
Oh, I see.
And the property line.
I get it.
And this parcel, it has more of a quote-unquote industrial use because of the compost facility. So for us to, get some traffic through here, it's going to be less intrusive than it would be by utilizing the Willows.
I find that, of course, problematic. Because I do frequent the garden there and the Willows. And my other question would be, is it sometimes better to not bother with hiding a tower, not hiding, but tastefully placing a tower in the woods, when ultimately you might be serving a better function by making it 100 feet in a non-wooded area? Because I think, wouldn't you, if the situation demanded, take into consideration the mature trees around there? If you've got 20 100-year-old oaks, they're not going to make it much further, and so in 10 years we're going to have a bare. Because a lot of in all three locations, depending where you are, the undergrowth has been cleared. So if you could survey what it's going to be like in 10 years and in 20 years, that would give the Parks Department a better look at the permutations as far as where our children are going to be situated. And to me, that says that's a lot of calculating and hypothesizing. Sometimes they're in the open. And in Ithan Valley, it would bother me if I went into that park and I knew that the thing was hiding up there somewhere. I have a lot of aversion to because I've read all the counter opinions about medical effects. And so I find it problematic, if you would, that also at Fenimore, that this would be a tower concealed. We have a right as citizens to know what's surrounding us, and especially of a scientific nature and electromagnetic nature is there.
Okay, is there any specific questions that you have? I mean, this is more question and answer, so.
I mean, this is just sort of the first step in the process.
Right,
we're just trying to get some basic information, and there's going to also be a period at the end of this for any general public participation about cell phone towers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm Brian Malika, and I'm a member of the Ithan Valley Friends, and I have a couple of questions about particularly the Ithan Valley Park. One of the big ones I have is, why has the site been chosen that's 200 feet down the hill versus putting it up on the top of the wall where one would think you'd get better coverage?
Let me get to that page, Brian.
Okay, thanks.
Not your first rodeo either.
It is not.
It's good to see you again.
Mike and I was in this business 10 years ago. I know Mike, I saw Dr. Foster. He's testified for me many times.
Brian never looked this good when he worked with us.
Thank you.
He was beaten down like the rest of us. Can you show me here where you mean by the wall?
Well,
And-
I mean,
and knowing-
I mean,
knowing again
I mean, the
these-
sound wall is what I'm talking about. Now, the sound wall ends somewhere along this route, but I know the Mill Road very well. I live across the street from the park. I walk it all the time. And my concern is that if it's 200 feet from the sound wall, that it will severely impact the trail. End up being close to the wall, to the trail that's the mill trail, and it would be far more visible to everybody who visits the park unless it were up on the top of the hill. So I guess my question is, can it be next to the privacy wall or right next to PennDOT's right-of-way?
Well, that would depend on how far over PennDOT's right-of-way extended. And I would have to pull their easement through there.
Right. Well, there's a fence there. One would assume that the fence line is their property line, but that's
Okay.
not always
I
true.
walked it pretty extensively. I didn't see I saw the fence down below it off of
Right.
the parking lot where the creek is,
Mhm.
but I did not see a fence up in here at the top of the hill.
Yeah,
Be
it
happy
ends.
to walk it with you.
Yeah, you're right, it ends.
So, again, this is a proposed location.
Sure.
Not set in stone. I can shift it
Okay.
to the west more to
Right.
get closer to the wall, but I can't encroach upon the right-of-way.
Can you construct it by coming across the right-of-way?
I cannot construct it by using their right-of-way.
That's what I thought. I was led to believe that that was going to be the case, and that would have been one heck of a negotiation if you had pulled that off. So my next question is about the size of the road that you would have to build in order to get to the compound.
At this point, it's just designed for a standard 12-foot telecom road, as you've seen before.
Well, that's not really my question. I probably didn't phrase it correctly. I'm talking about the size of the road and the impact to the park for the equipment that you need to get up there. I may be rusty, but I think the burial is 2/3 on a monopole. So if it's 140, the hole's going to be, what, 50, 70 feet?
No, I don't think it would be. That would all depend upon the geotech. Let me,
Yeah, what I was talking about was the road that would be, the size of the road that would be required to bring in the construction equipment. Yeah, you take that one, I'll take this one. The size of the road that would be required to bring in the construction equipment to pour the concrete, to clear the area. Everything you need to build the fence, to bring in the concrete for the compound, to bring the antennas up, to bring the monopole up, area for staging. All this usually takes a tremendous amount of space, and it takes big equipment to dig these holes. And the last question I asked was if Mike had an idea what the burial would be for the pole.
again, it hasn't been designed yet.
Okay.
It would depend upon a geotech, which would require a drill rig to get up there.
Understood.
There would be a lot of upfront clearing
Right?
that would be replaced later. And the road at the end and the clearing at the end would not be anywhere as near as invasive as it would be during construction. I doubt you're going to get a concrete truck up there at this location. We may have to bucket the concrete up there using a crane.
They did at my house.
So they're all very good questions and things that we're expecting.
Okay.
Challenges that we're expecting, but that we're not going to shy
Will
away
each
from.
carrier have their own shelter?
It depends on what equipment they're using at that time. Right now, Verizon and AT&T are the only ones using prefab shelters, and T-Mobile and Sprint are still using cabinets.
Okay.
So
And
the
what would-
cabinets being refrigerator size.
What would the fencing look like?
The fencing would conform to the local ordinance, which means that it would be 6 feet high, privacy slats with a double row of landscaping surrounding it,
Chain link?
chain link.
Right.
It could be board on board. I'm not adverse to that.
Right.
I wouldn't go vinyl here.
I wouldn't either. But neither of those, although they're standard operating procedures, standard construction types, don't really fit in with the character of the park. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is the monopole itself. I've seen some that are brown, that they have a faux finish that looks like bark. Is that something that's in your plans, is to construct a monopole that can fit into the environment as much as possible?
Yes, it is our plan to be as much as, or to conform with the surrounding nature of the park As far as what the exterior of the monopole would look like, I couldn't tell you that right now.
Right. So we don't know about the impact, the size of the fence. The fence would be
Well,
something
that's not
that
true. We're
be-
going to, right now, we're going to follow the letter of the ordinance, and we're happy to
I didn't mean that.
talk
I
about
meant the-
options.
I meant the access road, excuse me. I meant the access road to get the construction equipment up there.
Right.
That's something that we really don't know now. The other question I have is what happens at the end of life? So you got five-year term, 5 5s, you get to 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
the tower's there. Who's responsible to take the tower down and bring the site back to its original?
We are in 2 instances. The
Okay.
first is at the end of the term, in the lease agreement that we've presented, or anything that we would expect to see from the township.
Right.
At the end of any term, or earlier, or default, or anything like that.
Okay.
We would be required to remove that structure and restore to, existing condition at commencement.
Right.
Or during a period of inactivity.
Okay.
Both of those items are also called out in your ordinance.
Right. Are these carriers already online to lease in this space? Are these leases
I
been
can't-
signed? Are they contingents?
I can't lease what I don't have a legal right to.
But if you have some tacit agreement with them that if you get this location together, these 2 carriers are going to go on?
I think that's why all 3 of us are here tonight.
Okay, I understand. I just wanted to make sure. The cell part, I know, I'm sure you've done a radio propagation, and that's why these towers are going in these locations, is that you have a coverage area to serve. We talked about end of life. I know what happens with weather. These towers are intended to, as far as the fall zone's concerned, crumple?
They are.
Okay,
They're intended to kink, actually.
right. So there's no
Usually-
fall zones required?
No fall zones required.
Okay. And you can show that with an engineering study?
I can get you a letter from the
I'm sure you
pole
can.
manufacturer.
All right. Yeah, I guess those are our big concerns, is if it's in the center of the park and it takes away the Mill Road, it will severely impact the aesthetics of that park.
It may have an impact on the existing road, which I think we all agree needs some love, going up that hill towards the dam. So it may have some initial impact on that, but it'll all be put back when we start operation.
Right, but if the tower ends up being 200 feet from the wall, it'll basically be in the middle of the park. It'll end up being somewhere near the Mill Road.
Do you know the dead tree that I'm speaking of?
I do,
Okay,
Right.
so that's about where it would be.
yeah. Okay,
Any more questions?
is that everything? Thank you
You
very
good?
much.
Okay,
Thanks,
great.
Brian.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. Don't forget your pet.
My bad.
All right, so that's, any more questions? All right, so that was the longest 20 minutes with 10 minutes of questions we've ever gone through. So
I will prepare everybody upstairs.
we will obviously give the other carriers the same courtesies. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. At least I'm coming from a position of not having any knowledge on this, so it was very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Messed up her back, right? Messed up her back. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I was gonna say, that sounds like a little bit much. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Do you have the projector on?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
On our screens, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, let me thank you for coming tonight. Let me apologize for the delay. We had a lot of questions up here. I think these should go a little quicker because we asked a bunch of questions, but if you don't mind and you bear with us as you go through your presentation, we ask questions.
Absolutely, that's fine.
We're going to do that, and we'll probably go, maximum an hour is what we did with the other one, so.
Okay.
All right.
All right. First off, thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to appear before the Planning and Rec or the Park and Rec Board. My name is Chris Schubert. I'm the attorney here tonight on behalf of American Tower Corporation, which is the company which is proposing to construct these towers, and also the anchor tenant, which is New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, better known as AT&T Mobility. I take it that the members of the board, members of the commission had quite a number of questions. This is a process that I know both AT&T and American Tower have been working on with the township probably for the past 18 months to move it forward, principally because there is a very, very significant demand for wireless services in the township. Right now, it's been identified by the radio frequency engineer for AT&T that for a significant portion of the township, because of the increased demand for wireless services, that there is a lack of reliable coverage, and this is something that AT&T is looking to cure for the residents of Radnor Township. And just, I don't know if this information was passed along, but just to give the members of the board some information with regard to the growth of the industry and what the industry is facing in terms of demand, which is really driving this. Some recent statistics: 1 out of 3 American homes are now wireless only. That's double the rate from 2008 and nearly triple the rate from 2007. So more and more people are using wireless phones as their principal means of communication. They're abandoning landlines and just essentially are being untethered and rely upon wireless services for communications. 85% of small businesses reported using smartphones for their operations. That's more than double the usage from even 5 years ago. Smartphone usage grew by 81% in 2012, and by 2017, AT&T is estimating that that will be 19 times greater than it is today. So that statistic in and of itself shows the very incredible growth in the demand for this type of service. AT&T has experienced a 30,000% increase in mobile data traffic over the past 6 years. So just because of the explosive growth in the usage of smartphones and also wireless tablets, this is really what is driving the need for more and more of these types of cell site locations. Now, both American Tower and AT&T have approached the township. I believe the initial inquiry was made back in the spring of 2013. And I don't know how clearly this is coming across, but this is kind of giving you a little bit of a feel for where these proposed sites are to be located. The township parks are the topic and the focus for the development of these additional sites. Fenimore Woods, the site at Ivan Valley Park, and also the Skunk Hollow Park location is what is currently being proposed for these tree pole installations. And again, not sure how clear that's coming across with regard to the screen, but the photographs provide an aerial view of the proposed locations for the tree pole installations that are proposed for each of the parks. The one site, which is called Cabrini Eastern, is proposed to be located in Fenimore Woods. The Willow Park site is proposed to be located at the Willows, which is near the Skunk Hollow Park, and the Rawless Run is proposed for the Ivan Valley Park location. Now, I have some more details regarding the design of the facility. This is a site plan for the proposed site at Fenimore Woods. And what is proposed is a tree pole to be located near an existing cottage, which is located at the back part of the woods off of Paul Avenue. What is proposed is a 140-foot tall tree pole installation. The branches of the tree pole would extend to an overall height of 146 feet, approximately, and access would be taken back to that site off of an existing access drive that goes back to where the cottage is located. The details which depict the compound location, you can see on this exhibit that this is where the cottage is presently located, and what would be proposed would be the creation of a 50 by 50 foot fence compound that would be adjoining to the cottage where the tree pole itself would be located. The applicant has also done some photo simulations of this location.
So you're not proposing to use the cottage at all? Just locate everything next to the cottage?
There would be actual equipment placed inside the cottage.
In the cottage, okay.
The only thing that would be outside would be obviously the tree pole itself and the antennas. Now, this is a photograph of, and a photo simulation analysis was done of this proposed installation. And there were a series of 7 photographs that were done that I'll present to the board. This first one is a location which is off of Eagle Road, which is looking from the northwest towards the site. And from this view, the proposed tree pole installation cannot be seen. This next location is off of Eagle Road, which is directly adjoining site, looking from the north to the south at the proposed location. And in this photograph, you can see the tree pole in the foreground adjoining where the cottage is located. And again, this is going to be one of the tree pole installations that is really beefed up with a lot of the faux branches that would adequately conceal the antennas within the branches.
So the faux branches don't go all the way down?
What is proposed with this, and in this view, no. But if that would be the pleasure of the board or the recommendation of the board, that certainly can be done. I mean, additional branches could be added. And I should also point out that as an important design element, each of these towers obviously would be available for additional co-location. There would be, for each of the towers proposed, up to 4 co-locators that would be available for placement of antennas on the tower. And also, at the very top of the tower, there would be space available for the Township emergency communication antennas, which we would anticipate being essentially whip-style pole-type antennas that would be located at the very top. So that would also be available and be made available by both American Tower and AT&T for installation on this tower. The next picture is a photo simulation of a location which is a little bit further east on Eagle Road, looking south, immediately opposite of where the proposed tree pole installation would be located. And here you can see the indication of where the tree pole would be in the view that you would see from that location. Photograph number 4 is a location which is again further east on Eagle Road, looking to the southwest. And from this vantage point, the tree pole itself could not be seen. This view shows a location which is southwest of the site, looking back towards Eagle Road. And in the foreground is the proposed tree pole location. And again, if it's the board's pleasure, the branches could be lowered and placed lower on the tower itself. This location is immediately to the south of the cottage. And then finally, there's a location just to the southeast of the cottage. And this picture shows the fence which would be proposed to be located around the compound, which would completely conceal any of the equipment in the base of the tower. What is proposed at this location, the only piece of equipment that would not be located within the building would be an emergency backup generator.
While we're on Fenimore Woods, what upgrades do you plan to do to the cottage? Or are there any upgrades, or is it just locate the equipment in there, or?
I have a representative from American Tower who might be better able to answer that. Mike Schmidt, who is with the company Velocitel, who's an authorized agent here tonight on behalf of AT&T.
What's proposed is a capital contribution to the township. We had some back and forth about improvements to both the cottage and also, I think, the pavilion that's out there. And because there was some back and forth and we were a little bit unclear on exactly what was wanted, we ultimately settled on it was better just to give the township money as part of the proposal and allow township to do what they wanted with that. So I believe it's a $50,000 capital contribution.
Okay.
For improvements at the park.
All right.
Are you planning to provide us with any handouts with regard to what you're talking about tonight or not?
We do have, and I will summarize what the proposal is, the financial terms. It had already been presented to the township, and in fact, I've seen it, I think it showed up in the newspaper, so it is public knowledge as far as I understand, but I'll reiterate that in the event that anybody missed that or is not familiar with it. But it was set forth in a letter that was provided to the township manager.
I'm not aware of anybody on this board that's seen that information.
All right, we can certainly summarize all that.
I haven't seen it.
The next site, which I'd like to discuss, is the site at the Willows. And this would be, again, obviously on township property. This is close to where I understand the township municipal mulching and the waste composting site is located, just to the south of where this location is. There is, again, an existing access drive that goes back to the Willows, and that is shown here. That comes off of Darby Paoli Road, and this would take the access road would be constructed back to the proposed compound, which would likewise be 50 by 50 foot compound located just to the south side of the Willows building. And what is proposed at this location is a 130-foot tall monopole installation. It would be a tree pole, and with, again, branches that would extend to an approximately overall height of about 136 feet. The tower itself would be available for co-location for up to 4 co-locators. AT&T would have the top slot on the tower at 130-foot center line. And this tower would also likewise be available for co-location of the township's emergency communication antennas at the very top of the tower.
When you say 4 co-locators, are you including AT&T in that?
Yes.
4? So there's 4 total?
4 total, correct.
Okay. Plus the township antennas or whatever?
Correct, that's right. And we also had photo simulations that were done of this location. The first simulation shows a view from the access road off of Darby Paley Road looking due south to the proposed location. And there's an arrow, and this is not really showing up that well on the overhead, but there is an arrow which depicts the location of the proposed tree pole. It's just barely visible looking over the hill, and it sits behind an existing screen of trees. It would be important to point out that with regard to each of these locations, that in light of the fact that the tree pole is to be located in a stand of very mature trees, that this is an excellent application for this type of installation. And during the summer times, in most instances and in most views, this facility is not even going to be seen. This view is further off the access road as you're coming off of Darby Paley Pike, heading to the Willows building. There is an arrow which is right here, which depicts the location of the proposed tree pole, and again, very difficult to see it from that location. This is a view which is due east of the proposed site, and given the distance back of this location from Darby Paley Pike, you can see that with the arrow indicated at that location, you're not going to see the tree pole.
Would the tree be in front of that tree stand, behind it, or in the middle of the tree stand?
The way it looks like, based upon this, there is an intervening
row of trees?
It's almost like a small wooded area that is just adjoining where the mulch and composting area is, that is between the road and the tower location.
Beyond those trees.
Right. This shows 4 additional views, and each of these views, it's very apparent that the tree is not going to be seen. The first view in the upper left-hand corner of the exhibit shows a view which is located or taken from the northwest of the proposed tree pole location, and that's looking through a stand of trees. The tree pole at that location is not going to be seen. View number 5, which is in the upper right-hand portion of the picture, shows a view which is located, again, northeast of the proposed location along Darby Paley Road, and given the distance involved and the interruption by an additional stand of trees looking from that location, you're also not going to be seeing the tree pole from that location. View number 6, which is located in the lower left-hand portion of the exhibit, shows a view which is near where the entrance is to the Willows off of Newtown Road. And again, given the distance and the intervening landscaping that exists, you're not going to be seeing the tree pole from that vantage point. And then finally, a view from further down Newtown Road, and given the distances involved, you would not see the tree pole from that location. And these remaining views, I think all the other views I'm going to show you are from distances which are greater than the other views that we talked about previously. And each of these views, you're not going to see the tree pole. When the photo simulation analysis was undertaken by the land planner, he couldn't find the balloon that was flying at that point. And he's looking at that point for a very brightly colored red balloon that is flown at the height of 130 feet, and he could not see the balloon from any of those vantage points. Here are the last views, views 12, 13, 14, and 15. And the last site under consideration is the Ivan Valley Park. which is located off of Ivan Road, South Ivan Road. This is a site which is very close to the Blue Route 476, which is heading just located to the west of this location. And there is an access road that would be available to allow the establishment of the compound. Again, it would be a 50 by 50 foot compound that would be proposed. This would also be proposed as a 130-foot tree pole installation. And there's an existing wooded area where the tree pole itself would be located. And as a result of that, again, and I think the photo simulations will bear this out, that it would be very, very difficult, and the tree pole itself would be very, very much adequately screened by the location that's proposed. And this next exhibit provides a schematic of an elevation view of what the tree pole would look like. Again, designed at 130 foot, available for co-location of up to 4 wireless providers with emergency township antennas located at the very top of the structure. And I'll quickly go through the photo simulations. There were a series of 13 photographs that were taken from various vantage points around the proposed site. This first site is taken immediately adjoining the site just to the east of Ivan Avenue. So as you're heading in off the access road back to where the site is located, this is where the photograph was taken. And right at that location, you can see where the tree pole installation would be placed. And also what has been added to this exhibit is the proposed compound located within the woods. The next view, which is taken, is located just a little bit further east of that last shot. This is a view off of Roberts Road looking back to the proposed location. And the arrow indicates where the tree pole installation would be seen. And again, very, very much screened by the existing trees in and around the area. This is a view which is taken from Haviland Drive, looking again to the west to where the location or the proposed tree pole is proposed to be located. And indicated right here with the arrow is where the balloon was visible. And again, as you can see, given the distance involved and the other intervening trees and vegetation, it would be very difficult to really fully see the site at that location. With this exhibit, this is a photograph that was taken south of the proposed site on Ivan Avenue, looking north towards the site. And just barely visible is the balloon through the trees at that location. And again, very difficult to see the location from that vantage point. And this is a view which is taken, again, along Ivan Avenue, located north of the site, looking south. And at that location, the balloon was visible. And again, because of the existence of the mature trees in and throughout the area, it's going to be very, very difficult to see the tree pole at that location.
Are there alternatives to the monopoles or ways that you can, I know the earlier picture you showed with just the I guess the camouflage at the top. That's not something that, aesthetically is pleasing, to a community, especially if the trees, sans the trees are gone, you got this thing standing there with, what does technology, or what have, I guess, the art people with AT&T come up with to say, hey, this is a better way of camouflaging these monopoles that are going to be 140 feet in the air, other than balloons, we can understand that. But, I guess from a community standpoint, they're concerned about the aesthetics of this thing. It's there, okay? So is there anything that AT&T can suggest, or what have they done in other communities?
Well, again, I think what you have to do is consider the application and where these facilities are proposed to be located. Depending upon the application, say if it was proposed for installation on top of a building. There are ways of concealing it behind a faux building screen to make it, say if the building was constructed of brick. There are ways of fabricating a screen that would mimic the brick so that you're concealing the antennas behind that faux brick facade.
Basically, that's what we have to deal with, something that simulates a tree.
And I can certainly have the land planner that AT&T has retained, Brian Seidel, talk to the issue, but I would suspect that with this type of application where we're talking about locating the facility within a stand of very mature trees, and that's really what we're talking about. One of the issues here is that the trees that are in and around the township are very mature. You're looking at upwards to 80 to, in some instances, 100 feet. And that's a situation where it almost begs that the best application would be for a tree pole type installation.
But not being a smart aleck on this thing, but the trees have been there for 40 years. Okay, trees are gone, okay? God forbid, for whatever reason, you've got to take 40 years to get a tree back to that same. You'll be left with just a monopole there. That's my concern, as I see it. There's no guarantee that in 5 or 10 years, because we're looking at something that's going to be around for 10 plus years more. There's no guarantee that those trees that you are buffering this monopole with will be there 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I'm just wondering if there's something else that other communities have looked at. Someone mentioned earlier, some places have looked at flagpoles disguising. Now, I know you're not going to put a flagpole in the middle of a raft of trees, but some other alternatives, that's my concern.
Well, very basic would be you could create a flagpole type installation, or one of the issues with a flagpole is if you're going to make it a functional flagpole, you would also have concerns with regard to maintenance of the flag and also the noise that would be created, the wind noise that would be created as a result of the flag flapping in the breeze. And I've been involved in certain applications where residents are very concerned about the noise issue related with that. There are other applications where, in lieu of doing a flagpole or a functioning flagpole, you can just do a straight monopole where you would have antennas mounted internal to the pole itself. Now, one of the downsides or one of the drawbacks of that type of installation is that most of the providers need a certain amount of antennas to provide the state-of-the-art long-term LTE technology that's necessary today, essentially the state-of-the-art that's necessary, which means that, for example, if AT&T was going to locate at any of these sites and you were just building it as a straight monopole, AT&T would have to take up 2 slots, not just 1 slot, but they'd have to be located at 130 feet and 120 feet. Say if Verizon also needed that location, they would also need 2 slots. So you're reducing the availability for additional co-location with that type of application.
At the Ithan Valley Park location, did you consider putting the tower in the parking lot, the existing parking lot? And is that an option?
That certainly would be an option. My understanding is that both American Tower and AT&T has met extensively with the township and with township representatives and have actually gone out into the field. And these were locations that were kind of decided upon in consultation with some of the township officials with their input. And is that accurate? So I'm getting some head shakes, yes, that's accurate.
Thank you.
But anything would be available in terms of if the Park and Rec Board or the commissioners or any other commission group within the township would think that there is a better location within any of the parks, that would certainly be something that would be available and would be open for discussion.
Could you briefly just touch on the idea of the ancillary buildings at each of the locations, you know, what you would need, and also what the various providers would need in ancillary buildings? And lastly, and I will quiet down after this, you're talking about emergency generators at each of the locations, fueled by what, natural gas, I would assume, piped in? Is that something?
If natural gas is available, that would certainly be the first option.
And if you don't have natural gas, you're going to go with what, oil application?
Are they all being proposed for propane if natural gas is in the diesel?
Diesel.
Okay.
So in other words, what you're saying is that if it's not there, and again, this is some questions the township's going to have to handle, but in addition to ancillary buildings, emergency generators, if you're saying natural gas is not there, then there's going to have to be storage of diesel fuel or propane fuel or something like that at these locations. And would each of the providers, the cell phone providers, need that capability?
That depends. I know that presently AT&T is requiring that, and Verizon Wireless is requiring that. Whether a company like T-Mobile would need that, or Sprint would need that, or any of the other providers would need that, that's really up in the air at this point.
Three generators in each location.
That's possible.
Three generators
that's
and then
possible.
3 sources of fuel for those generators.
The preference would be that the providers would get together and share and design a site so that it would be adequate and could function with one generator.
Actually, it would be I'll speak to that quickly. The generator would be a shared generator. So in other words, AT&T would have the generator installed, but every co-locator would use the same generator so that you don't have 4 or 5 generators at the same time. And the way the design works, if natural gas is not available, it's a self-contained unit with a very small diesel tank that is all self-contained in one unit. That's the way it functions. So somebody would monitor that backup generator on a regular basis, just like they would monitor the antennas.
Is that generator testing itself once a week going on?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, so that could be a noise issue for the...
It could be, yes, but there's several ways around that as far as different options, as far as keeping the noise at a low level, so that's not a disturbance.
All right, can we, let's just focus on...
I'm sorry, did they say that the generator's within the 50 by 50 structure or outside of it?
No, everything would be inside the 50 by 50 compound, even any building. I know that was another question, but it would all be contained within that compound.
I have a question. Your diagram for Fenimore indicated a 30 by 30 foot space. Is that a mistake, or is that designed to be
It's due to
smaller?
limitations of what we have out there as far as availability.
Well, you also have the building. I thought you were putting equipment in the building as well?
Yeah, and that's probably why the space is smaller.
Okay.
Because there's not as much space needed.
Okay.
And we were directed to make it, as small as possible.
I understand.
So that in combination with the building.
Where is AT&T currently located inside Radnor Township?
That would be...
I'm Andrew Peterson, radio frequency design engineer representing AT&T. So AT&T has a number of sites currently operating and serving their subscribers in the township. There's a cluster of sites around Villanova University. You can see them in the eastern portion of the township here on the map. They are all rooftop installations, so you may not really notice them. There is a site just north of the Ethan Valley Park proposed site that's on basically a wood pole along the Blue Route there. And that's a site that if we move forward and build the site we're calling Rawls Run, we would decommission that site most likely. It's a it's a structurally confined, it can't support the antenna array that AT&T would like to have there because it's limited structurally. So it's the best we can do for the moment, but if a new structure is built there, we would decommission that site. There are a couple other sites, a site that AT&T calls Willowburn, which is on Sproul Road. It's a monopole. There's a site AT&T calls Wayne, which is a self-support tower, so a lattice-type structure. And then there's St. David's site, which is another rooftop site. And
So there are no tree monopoles?
There's one in Radnor Valley.
Is that AT&T?
Isn't that what your Willowburn is? Isn't that what you said that was a...
Right, yeah. Right. I have it listed as a monopole. It's actually a monopine, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in Radnor Valley.
I know
Yeah.
that. I know that particular one. I just...
Right, so it's the same type of style that we're proposing.
Does township staff have a copy of this that you're looking at right now?
I'm not sure if it was submitted, but I can certainly submit it.
That's something that you can provide for us?
Absolutely.
And then my follow-up question is on Ithan Avenue now, where you have your existing pole at the corner of Clyde Road and Ithan Avenue, is that pole, you said that pole couldn't sustain additional antenna on there. Could you put a larger pole there at your existing location?
You're talking about the one
Yes.
labeled Radnor Valley?
Yes.
I think it's a PECO-owned structure.
It's a PECO-owned structure?
Yeah, I don't think that a replacement is possible there.
And-
That's one that's been around for a while.
So-
It's an old AT&T.
AT&T is on a PECO pole?
Correct. I think it's a utility-owned structure there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you give us a little idea, let's just start with Ithan Valley, for construction, what are you going to need to get to where you want to construct the tower? There's an old macadam road there that's not in great shape. What kind of equipment are you going to have to get up there? What are you going to have to do?
I would turn that question over to a better
Somebody
suited
else.
representative.
Somebody
yes.
else.
Yeah, if there's any other radio frequency related questions or sites, questions related to what else is going on from a network planning perspective.
I do actually have one, and that is, what is the intended reach of each one of these poles in terms of improved coverage over a radius or a...
So, you want to start with?
Yeah, maybe I should. All right, if we take one step back and I explain this a little more clearly. So we're not just indicating existing facilities here. We're also indicating, with the green icons, the location of the proposed facilities, and then beyond that, we are also indicating existing reliable service with all the shaded areas that kind of appear greenish yellow on the overhead, but are yellow on my exhibit here. So those are areas today where AT&T subscribers have reliable service. So if we were to then activate each of the proposed facilities and integrate them into the network, we would have this additional green service areas, which represent the coverage footprints of the proposed facilities. They're a little tough to see on the overhead there as far as differentiating the color between old and new, but I can provide cleaner copies.
And maybe you can also trace through where the township boundary is located.
Sure, yeah, there's a lot of typical map features on here, but the dotted blue are the township boundaries, and they are kind of overshadowed by the county boundary as well there. But that's basically, the outline of the township here.
So out of the 15 or 20 parks we have in the township, have you looked at any other locations other than the ones you've looked at? How many parks we got? 10, 15? Well, yeah.
No, I haven't personally. These were the three that were best suited to address some deficiencies in the network. You can see if you kind of go between the existing and the proposed coverage. they're not dead center of where the lack in service is, maybe with the exception of the Skunk Hill Park site where that is in a really poor service area. So, ideally, maybe they could be placed a little bit closer to those dead spots or the center of the dead spots. But they are strategically located where they're going to offer some improved service.
And the yellow, that's showing existing coverage, the yellow.
Right.
Is that just AT&T or is that all cell service?
This is just AT&T.
Just AT&T.
Yep.
Is there how would you rank the 3 proposed locations you have right now in terms of best suited to address, or I guess sort of fill the greatest voids in coverage?
Well, the Willow Park site will provide the least amount of redundant coverage, but that's really just one half of the equation here because of the onslaught of subscriber data usage that AT&T and all the other providers have seen over the past 6-7 years, really since the introduction of the iPhone and then Android devices, tablets, air cards, vehicles now with 4G chipsets. In fact, I just was at a meeting last week and a woman was talking about her new dishwasher or her clothes washer that she can't interface with because it has some 4G LTE smarts, but she has no coverage in her house, so her clothes washer won't function correctly. So even consumer electronics now there's no end in sight really. So because of this onslaught that's yielded tens of % increases in data usage over the past 5-6 years, coverage is really just half of the equation. We're now offloading sites, so we're splitting traffic areas into smaller traffic areas by adding sites. So when I talk about redundant coverage and a site maybe like the one in Fenimore Woods that has some overlapping service area with an existing site, by no means is that dismissing the usefulness of that location. It just so happens it won't offer as much unique coverage as, say, the Skunk Hill Park site, but there is that capacity demand that's not going away that these sites will also be addressing.
Since you're the expert with radio frequencies, how do you address concerns from the community about magnetic fields and so on?
Well, these facilities, even using some unrealistic worst-case assumptions, and when I perform electromagnetic emissions analyses all the time, I've done hundreds of rooftop surveys where I'm actually on a rooftop that's being used as an antenna support platform with some specialized equipment to measure field density on the rooftop, and even using some worst-case unrealistic assumptions on ground level surrounding these types of facilities. Typical values are hundreds of times below the FCC's safety threshold. In reality, you're generally thousands of times below the safety threshold.
Is it part and parcel of ongoing maintenance that those readings are constantly monitored and sent to the township so that, that somebody's aware of it on a regular basis other than just one and done?
I've seen where townships have made that a condition of approval that, biannual or annual readings are done.
So it's not normal?
That's not typical. AT&T, as a matter of course, does test their rooftop facilities on a regular basis. And frankly, that's the only, the potential to come close to the FCC's limits.
Yeah, I know that, but
are only.
They said the same thing in 1950 about smoking cigarettes. I'm not being a smartass, but but that's something that we can ask the township to make sure that it's put into the.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that in the past where that's been made a condition of any approvals. Sure.
I think the board had a question, and one of the a statement of considerations that were requested by the commission was with regard to the physical impacts of the proposed installation of the facilities on the parks. and also issues regarding maintenance and timing of any potential replacement of the tower. So, Brian?
Hi, good evening. Brian Seidel, land use planner. I'm working with American Tower and AT&T on these project sites. All of the sites, the 3 sites that have been proposed or discussed here this evening, have really been designed with the input from the township staff and from Public Works here in terms of getting some of their feedback and what their interests and concerns are. So each one of the sites are really intended to really minimize that impact here. You know, for the Willow Park, for example, the site was originally proposed at being over at the Skunk Hollow, or the Skunk Park property, Skunk Hollow property, was moved over to Willow Park, again, to reduce the impact in the area, keep it on the Willow Park property, and you know, keep it in with the trees and in keeping with the surroundings and that for that nature. Ithan Park, that was discussed. Again, that one, there was a question raised about keeping it in the parking area, so to speak. The discussion was made to really get it back away from the parking area, away from the creek that's in that area, and move it slightly up in grade. There's a natural trail that goes behind there that would be an access drive for the tower, and to be installed back further away from the general population of where everybody's coming in from the vehicular aspect here. So again, we're trying to minimize the impact of the towers in the parks and from the visitors of the park. Regarding maintenance, we're setting them back from those general areas, but however, all of those locations would still provide vehicular access to those facilities that'd be easily serviced. Generally, from a maintenance standpoint, the sites would be monitored remotely. They would be visited approximately once a month. A technician will go out there with an SUV or a pickup truck to inspect the sites, monitor them, make sure they're operating properly. For the most part, that technician would just be there during normal business hours, daylight hours. It would only be in the case of emergency that somebody would need to come after hours for that reason.
What about initial construction, though? I mean, if we say go tomorrow, how long does it take you to put your tower in? How long does it take each of the carriers to put their tower in? What kind of equipment are they going to have to get in there for, the gentleman mentioned, like cement trucks and everything else? I know in Ithan that drive up there is not that good. So what's the thought process there?
Correct. For the Ithan Valley Park, again, the bridge crossing into that park would be somewhat difficult, and you know, it would be our intent to really avoid using the existing bridge to create secondary access over the bridge, or to bring in smaller equipment to be able to accomplish the same construction techniques, essentially, with some smaller equipment and get it across the creek without using the bridge or reducing the impact on the bridge.
How far are you going up the hill there? Do you know?
I would say from the parking area into the wooded area where the tower's proposed might be 100 feet, 150 feet where it was discussed.
Mm-hmm. And any idea impact of trees? How many trees you're going to have to take out to put in Ithan Valley, let's say, specifically? How many trees would you have to take out to put in your 50 by 50 pad and get equipment in there and everything else?
The location where it was discussed there, like I said, there is a natural trail that it was very easy to walk to the site. There's a significant amount of vegetation. Most of it was smaller vegetation. It would require the removal of a few trees in that area. I don't have a specific number. But yes, there would be a certain number of trees that would be required. However, with the natural trail and drive that's in that area, the intent would be to minimize the disturbance of that area.
Okay. I mean, the plan for that trail, I think our Boy Scouts are in fixing that trail and creating a bigger trail system in there, so we may want to take a look at that.
And that, again, that's something we'd be happy to look at in terms of alternatives there. Generally, the Ithan Valley Park, there's limited areas. Obviously, so there's the parking areas in there, and then for the most part, everything else is wooded. I know when we were out there doing our initial investigation, there were some mulch piles, wood chip piles out in that area. So I think there's certainly areas that we could accomplish the same type of aesthetic and development there.
Did you look at all across Clyde Road where the existing pole is up into that wooded area? Did you look at that location at all for a possible cell tower site?
That would be to the south?
That would be to the north.
It would be to the north.
So
yeah.
Ithan Valley Park, Clyde Road, you have your existing antenna on the Pico pole that's right there at the corner of Clyde and Ithan
Correct.
Avenue. So heading north up Ithan from there, there's a lot of wooded area in there. There is a stream that goes through there, but has anybody investigated that as a possible site for a tower?
We didn't. We actually did investigate a location to the south. And it was indicated in discussions that this would be a more preferred location and more accessible location. I don't believe we explored anything to the north.
Could you tell me where to the south that you explored before the staff told you not to look there?
It was still in the same general area. It was, what we had originally looked at was trying to take access from South Bryn Mawr Ave and coming up along the 476 from that location. But again, the extent of site improvements and disturbance to the wooded area that would have been required, we were encouraged to find another route.
I'm sorry, you would come from Bryn Mawr Avenue, or you would come down from the Blue Route down to a location
We would
there?
come from Bryn Mawr Avenue. That was the first idea that we looked at.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
You want to go in?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One, can you explain a little bit more clearly what's the business relationship here between American Tower and AT&T?
Sure. American Tower is a company that primarily owns and operates and maintains the steel infrastructure, what they call the vertical real estate, where the wireless providers who actually have the FCC licenses hang their antennas. So American Tower would be essentially the developer and ultimately the owner of each of the tower site locations. AT&T would be a tenant, essentially a lessee at each of the locations. One of the benefits of having this arrangement is that we have an anchor tenant. American Tower has an anchor tenant and a tenant that has expressed a need for coverage within the township and is willing to move forward with this whole transaction to make it a reality. The other benefit is that American Tower, since it's one of, and I think it is the largest tower company in the world, has a master lease agreement in place right now currently with AT&T. So it's not an issue where this tower company has to negotiate a separate sub-deal or sub-lease with AT&T. That lease essentially is already in place. So they work in partnership. It's not unusual. In fact, it's very typical that a tower company such as American Tower will work in conjunction with an anchor, a wireless provider, to seek ultimately zoning entitlements and approval to move forward with development of a site like this.
Is this an exclusive relationship with AT&T, or is this?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then, is American Tower, are they prepared to go forward with just one of the three sites if we so chose?
I understand American Tower is prepared to move forward with all three of the sites.
I know, but if we said we only want to go forward with one, are they prepared to do a?
I cannot speak for American Tower, and I'm not even sure if you'd be able to speak to that, Frank.
Well, obviously, we would like all three towers. But, you know, I don't want to say we'll take what we can get, but if one is the decision, then certainly we would take it under serious advisement. But we would prefer, obviously, all three.
And if there's only one, how would you rank the three in terms of priority?
Well, we go by the demand of AT&T would actually be the ones who would tell us if they had to choose where they want the service is most important to them, as demonstrated by the RF engineer. So they would actually determine which site, if they had to pick one. It would be more their decision than ours.
Okay, and then the last question is, if we have residents who are Verizon, they have their cellular service through Verizon, I guess, is there any way you can address how someone may think, okay, so the Park and Rec Board just recommended American Tower and AT&T, how is that going to help me? How am I sure that
what I can tell you, the minute that we get approval, Verizon will call us, guaranteed. Okay. It would happen that fast, because it's an issue for every carrier, not just AT&T. They just happen to be out in the forefront right now for these sites. But we've done other sites where before we even get to construction, we're contacted by Verizon and the other carriers. So it benefits, everyone would benefit without a doubt for these locations.
Okay.
Does AT&T or AT&T Mobility or any subsidiary of AT&T own a piece of American Tower Corp?
No.
There's no
No.
common ownership?
No.
Thank you.
All right, we've got 3 minutes for public participation.
Well,
Are you done, or,
well,
sorry,
and-
hold on a second.
Unless you didn't want to know what the business terms were.
Yeah, we need to know
proposed.
that.
And again, I had introduced and provided information to the commission that there had been some public disclosure, and I think I just saw a newspaper article earlier that you had circulated, Joe, that reported this. So I think it's available, but just so everybody's clear and we're on the same page, what was proposed with regard to this project moving forward was for each site a monthly rent rate of $2,500 per month. That would be a total of $7,500 a month for the three. An initial term of 5 years, automatic renewals for 4 successive 5-year renewal periods. That would be at the option of each of the providers who would be co-locating on the site, in this instance AT&T. So the total lease term would be 25 years. The escalator for each term would be at 10%. So for each 5-year term, at the start of the next term, there would be a bump up of 10% of the base monthly rent. So when you do the calculation, the total lease amount for the full term of the lease would be $915,765 per site. And for the three, that would be $2,747,295 total if all the leases went out for full term. In addition to that, the applicants would be willing to prepay for the first term, the first 5-year term, essentially all the rent that would be owed. So essentially, the total amount of $450,000 would be paid on day one, which would prepay rent for the first 5-year term. Any additional carrier co-locations would add another $200 per month per carrier per site. So we get the telephone call from Verizon. Verizon goes through whatever approval process would be necessary and secures the entitlements from the township. They hang their antennas. They work out a lease deal. The additional co-location would add $200 per month per each of those sites. And in addition, as Mr. Schmidt from Velocitel has already explained, AT&T and its partners would make a one-time capital contribution of $50,000 for each site to the township, which would be placed in escrow and would be used by the township toward infrastructure improvements at each of the public areas, would offset any of the physical impacts that would be associated with the development of each of these sites at each of those locations.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Susan Stern. I live in the Newtown Square section of Radnor Township, actually a mile from the Skunk Hollow Willow Park area. I was going to ask the money, but they've answered that, so I'm going to ask a question of this board. I really get that the money's tempting. It's tempting to the township. It's tempting to our boards, to our commissioners who have, financial constraints. Earlier, I think Mr. Gillen asked if there's other technology. In Europe, there are little micro towers all over Europe. You don't see big monopoles anymore. The technology there is far ahead. They're willing to pay us $2 million because it's way cheaper for these companies to put a big fat pole in and a 50-foot pad and a road and all this stuff, because that's cheaper for them. The micro towers are more expensive, but they are better for us. $900,000 up in the Fenimore Woods area of town is roughly, maybe a house, maybe two. Down in my neck of the woods, it's a house and a half. You know, we're going to potentially ruin the view of a lot of people's homes by putting up these towers and their property values. And for $250, you can go and buy a little machine. It's in my living room. I plug it into my cable. My cell phone works in my house. I live a mile from Skunk Hollow. I'm in the middle of all that white. I don't need this tower. I paid my $250 for my little power booster, and I have cell phone coverage in my house. And this is going to irreparably change the view at the Willows. We'll come down Newtown Road after spending all this money to buy our Drawson. And are we going to see a view of the top of this pole? And by the way, co-location, go look at the AT&T tower in Wayne. What co-location means is we're going to have a boatload of antennas shooting off of this thing.
Do you have a specific question for these
I'm
guys?
sorry, I thought this was public comment.
We were actually asking for specific questions for these guys at this point. We talked about that in the
Okay.
beginning of the meeting.
Well, then
So
I'm
if you
gonna-
have a specific question for them, that'd be great. At the end, you can...
I need to get my son at 9 from the high school. So
Okay.
I'm just going to do my 2 minutes
well,
and be out of here.
do you have a question specifically for them?
I would ask them to respectfully withdraw this and put in micro towers. I know they're more expensive for you, but they're better for this township. And they're better for everyone's property values and our noise. There's already a generator at the Willows that buzzes when I'm over there gardening. It's loud. Do not kid yourselves. You people will hear the generator. Go to the Willows now. You can hear it every once in a while. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sarah Billing again. Could you put up the drawing that you have for the Willows, sir?
Sir, are you going to ask the same question you asked for the last company?
I'm not concerned about Newtown Road looking at this tree. I'm looking at a 50-foot pad at the back of the mansion that you're about to lease, and he's going to put over $1 million into redoing this. And you know where the dumpsters are now?
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're going to put a 50-foot pad. So I don't see how anybody can make a decision about that without bringing Jeffrey Miller into it. Because
Okay,
if you look at that line...
The question is to them, so ask them where the location will be.
Is that the only site at the Willows where you would want to put it? Because you're interrupting the mansion function. Talk about the base of a tower. How wide is the tower? 6 feet, and you've got 50 feet of concrete.
So the question is, can they put it somewhere else?
Can you put it someplace else?
In that area?
And why did you choose the Willows rather than Skunk Hollow? And I'm not being antagonistic, I'm just asking.
Well, my understanding is, first off, with regard to the issue of Skunk Hollow, that park versus the Willows. Skunk Park, and without doing a further title investigation, my understanding is that there might have been some deed restriction that prevented the commercial use of that park for this purpose. That would warrant further investigation. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but my understanding is that at least at a preliminary blush with regard to what we know about that park and how the township acquired title to that park, that there may well be an issue with regard to being able to use that park for anything other than public purpose, for park and rec purposes. So as a result, the location was shifted, and we were, it was suggested that we take a look at the Willows. And again, in the consideration of trying to minimize the impact with regard to doing a new road installation, doing a development of a new access, to utilize the existing access that goes back to the Willows, and also to use the existence of that building there for the placement of this tower, again, with the hopes of minimizing any of the impacts of doing additional development in different areas. Again, you know, the applicants would be willing and amenable to listening to any recommendations with regard to perhaps altering the location if ultimately the township would believe that a different location on that property would be better. So we're open to that. But this is just an initial suggestion and recommendation kind of being driven also by some of the input from the township staff at this point.
And Sarah, this is really just education for us.
Okay,
You know,
well, I just want to bring up, it we're not looking at the tree line at the Willows. We're looking at a tower and a 50-foot by 50-foot pad directly behind the mansion, probably where the trash is kept right now, and it's fully visible to anybody who comes to the Willows.
Understood. Thank
And I
you.
also want to make it clear that we haven't decided to do anything. We
haven't even decided.
I just because the way you phrased your question inferred that we had. And I just want to make sure it was very clear that we haven't.
I just wanted to point it out. I'm not concerned about what the tree looks like a mile away. I'm looking at what the tree looks like at the very base of it.
All we're doing is
in the
evaluating
park.
proposals right now. That's all we're doing. Thanks.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You by yourself?
I'm by myself. There's no posse behind me. If you're waiting for my attorneys to show up, they're not coming.
First of all, I apologize. We did not think it would take this long, but thank you very much for your patience.
No apology necessary.
We're trying to keep it to an hour. We started at a half hour, went to 45, now we're at an hour or whatever, but we'll give you your time, and we may ask questions along the way. Then, obviously, public participation's, they're allowed to ask questions to you as well. So.
Sure, no problem whatsoever. In
All right.
fact, we're used to this, and all the three companies that we're in, we all know each other, so we, I mean, this is a standard operating procedure. My name is Tony Peduto, and I represent CTI Towers. I'm the CEO at CTI Towers. So we've got a proposal that we've just submitted to you guys, and we've been working with the town. We actually have a relationship with the township because we own the tower right out in back of the administration building. So we just recently renewed that tower lease for another 29 years, and we worked with the township on that renewal. So happy to be here and happy to walk you through the proposal that we have. Basically, I'm sure that you'll see the data on page 2. As I'm sure my colleagues before me came in and told you about the need for wireless connectivity. Everybody's going wireless, and as the home builders are building homes, one of the biggest demands and one of the biggest needs that they're hearing from their constituencies are that they want wireless coverage. Any new home buyer wants wireless coverage. If you look at the stat on the bottom, 61% of your home buyers are under the age of 48. Okay, when you have a community like this, beautiful community, a lot of old trees, that's the beautiful part of it. But to attract the new residents, obviously, they're going to want that wireless connectivity. It's tough when I'm sitting upstairs and I have AT&T service and I can't even get any service. And I know that they're working on coming on our tower, but they're not there yet. Okay, so again, I won't go through a lot of it. You can read. I'm sure you've probably heard most of it before, but I'll give you a little background on the company on page 3. We were established in 2011. We were actually spun off from Comcast. Okay, so Comcast had towers that were put in place for their off-air reception when the cable systems were first franchised, and they never allowed wireless companies to go on their towers. However, over time, a couple things happened. First of all, they acquired companies that did allow wireless companies on their towers. So they end up with a portfolio of towers that have tenants on them. They really didn't know how to manage it because they never allowed tenants on their own towers. Second of all, you had municipalities saying that they didn't want to add any more towers. If there was an existing tower, they were hoping that the clients could go onto those existing towers. And I can tell you in a situation that we had out in Indiana, we had a tower and Comcast had said no for years, and Verizon went into the municipality just as we were formed, and the municipality said to them, well, go get a letter from Comcast stating that they won't let you on the tower, and then we'll take you through zoning for a new tower. Well, at that time we had been formed. They came to us. We said, nope, we're open for business. And the municipality said, you need to go on the CTI tower, and we put Verizon on that tower. And for them, they were happy too because they deployed faster. So again, it's a mindset change for Comcast to say, okay, we've got tower assets. Can we utilize these towers? And if we can utilize them, how do we run that business, because we don't have the expertise inside the company. And what they were doing actually, as they consolidated markets and they tied cable franchises together, because each municipality had their own tower for off-air reception, once they tied the networks together through fiber, the towers became obsolete. You only needed to have one tower, and they would take towers down. And before CTI was formed, they actually took 1,000 towers down in the preceding 5 years. So again, they had these assets. Municipalities wanted the carriers to go on existing structures, and CTI was formed back in 2011. We own and manage over 800 towers in 39 states. We are the third largest private tower company in the United States. We also construct and purchase towers outside of the Comcast portfolio. So we're not strictly a Comcast company. That's what got us started. But we've actually had external growth of 12% this year. We've purchased towers in Massachusetts, Michigan, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. Our management team has experience building towers in very difficult to zone areas. I'm going from here tonight to the state of Vermont tomorrow. We have a tower in one situation in Vermont. It's on top of a mountain. Verizon wants to go on the tower. They need to extend the tower by 5 feet, and there's all kinds of opposition in Vermont. They are very, very difficult to deal with. But we've also put them up on private ranches. We put them in the Coconino National Forest, as well as Monterey, California, right at the airport. So we understand tough zoning, in tough areas with communities that are very sensitive to what these towers look like. And obviously, it makes eminent sense to be working with the community. Anybody can tell you that we can build a tower. Any of the 3 companies that are here, this is our business, this is what we do. At the end of the day, what's the best for the Parks and Recreation Department? What's the best for the township? What's the best for the residents of Radnor Township? And certainly, the aesthetics of the community are always going to be tantamount when you're talking about building towers. We have a management team, very qualified. I'll let you read our bios, so I don't have to go through that. And again, just on page 5, talk about our proposal overview. We're offering an aggressive ground rent. It's an above-market ground rent, and it puts the burden on my company to lease the towers to multiple tenants. Obviously, there's a need for wireless coverage. You've seen everybody talking about the lack of coverage in this town. Again, a lot of that is because of how beautiful this town is. And with that tree cover, with the terrain that you have, it's very difficult if you don't have towers for wireless signals to travel very far. So again, we're putting the burden on ourselves. We believe that we can get these towers to 3 to 4 tenants. We feel every major wireless carrier will be on those towers. In addition to that, public safety has needs for the towers as well. Just like we did here on the tower behind the administration building, we'll offer public safety free space on the towers. So again, there won't be any cost to taxpayers for public safety coverage to be enhanced. We're also going to offer revenue sharing. So as our tower becomes more profitable and we add tenants on, the recreation department and or the township will realize additional revenue. Capital grants, again, on the front side, we believe that, again, if we're going to be here, we're going to make a commitment to the community. So we'll give capital grants to the recreation department and township so that they can utilize those funds as they see fit. What we did with our ground lease with the administration building that was just approved a couple weeks ago, the agreement was that we would pay 10 years of rent up front so that we were able to give the town a very large check, which is what they requested because they can put that money to use today. And the lease term, we would look for a 10-year initial term, 2 renewals of 10 years each, although realistically it would be a 10, and a 9 because anything over 30 years would be a conveyance, so it really would be a 29-year lease. And the reason we look for long-term leases, just like I'm sure my predecessor told you, is that these networks are being designed for the next 50 years, and the carriers want to make sure that they've got a location that's going to stay, that's not going to change after 10 years, especially when they're investing $1 million per site. Our proposal on the ground rent, and this is per site, we'd look at initial ground rent of $3,000 per month. That ground rent would commence 30 days after final zoning approval, 3% annual escalator, and we'd guarantee it for the term. So if for whatever reason the tenants don't come, the township and the recreation department would realize that revenue guaranteed for the first term. And so, I mean, just running it out with no revenue sharing and just putting the escalators on top of that, it'd be over $400,000 after 10 years. And again, we would be open if the recreation department and the township wanted to do an upfront payment again, we would not be adverse to that. We've done it once, we can do that again.
When you say guaranteed for the term, you're talking first term or each renewal as well?
It would be guaranteed for the first term. So if for whatever reason we didn't get any tenants, obviously we're not going to go forward with the business after 10 years. Not likely, again, in this community. So we would anticipate those renewals would certainly come in, and again, there'll be escalators on top of that.
You said you don't think it's likely that other tenants aren't going to come in and want to have parts of these different towers, but I thought you said earlier you haven't gotten AT&T onto the one here behind the township building.
AT&T's filed an application with us, okay, and they actually had a major shutdown back in July of this year. So any new tower deployments were shut down because of a capital crunch that they had. They've been moving forward on amendments on existing sites that they had, but they weren't deploying any new sites. So that's just temporary. I understand.
Okay, so but I thought this tower wasn't built just recently. I mean, this has been up for several years, right?
That's correct.
And they haven't been on it during that whole time frame.
That is correct.
Okay. I have concerns that while everybody expects there to be demand to have a co-locator on here, what if there isn't, and all of a sudden we have a big monopole up there, and someone who has AT&T or someone who has Verizon or something else isn't able to get service, which is one of the reasons why we're even looking at these proposals in the first place.
Well, first of all, we're not going to build a tower unless we have a bona fide lease on it. Okay, so if we don't get a lease from the tenants, okay, we're not going to take the site through zoning. So we're not going to put a tower up just for the sake of putting a tower up.
I understand that.
But once we take it through zoning, we'll have a tenant lease on it. And will the tenants come in? Absolutely. The reason why it's coming in now is, again, new spectrum, okay, with the higher frequencies and more demand on data. If you look at that first chart that we put up in terms of the data demands, okay, think of your kids. I mean, I've got 4 sons, 27 to 21. They live on their phones. Everything is through their phones. The data is what's bogging down the network. It's not voice traffic anymore. It's all data. and all the kids are going to full motion video. They want TV shows on their phones and all of this. The technology is allowing that, but what happens is now the towers have to be spaced a lot closer. Back in the day, in 1995, towers were spaced about 3 miles apart. Now they're getting as close as a quarter mile apart because of the density that's needed to handle the bandwidth and the data throughput.
I understand that. I guess that's why I'm curious that AT&T still hasn't gotten in on this tower, and I have some concerns about the idea of, oh, if we build it, they will come. I just have some little concerns.
Do you have a minimum
about that.
number of leases that you would require before you would build a tower?
One.
If you just have one? Oh, one and you'll go.
We get one tenant, we build it, okay? And then at that point, the risk is all on me, because at that aggressive ground rent that I proposed earlier, there's not going to be much more from a tower lease standpoint that I'm going to be getting. So that first piece of revenue just covers my expense.
But the risk of not having sufficient coverage from all the other carriers besides that single one is then on the township then, right?
Well, it's really not on the townships per se.
Well,
it's on us. I
township.
mean, my business is to go get those leased up, right? Because at one tenant on that tower, we don't make money. Plain and simple, not with this proposal, okay? But we know that in this township, there's a demand for wireless coverage, because anybody I've spoken to in this business, and AT&T was just here before me, and I speak to their regional manager quite frequently, and he says, tough place to get a tower zoned, and we have a demand and need for that coverage. All the carriers do. I mean, it's tough when, like I said, I'm sitting upstairs and I got guys who are on Verizon phones and they're getting their email and all their data, and I'm sitting there dead in the water. Again, it's temporary because AT&T is coming. I know it because we own the tower and we've got the applications in.
Well, who's on the tower now, if you don't mind my asking?
Verizon and T-Mobile,
Just the two?
just the two.
And any insight as to what the issue with AT&T was? Or is?
Yeah, actually, it was all over the press that back in July, AT&T had a major shutdown of their new build and their new deployments.
Yeah, but that tower has been there for how long? It seems like a really long time.
What, and AT&T's never been on that tower?
They've never been on that tower, that's correct.
Any idea on when that's going to get approved or done? Or I understand it's not up to you, obviously.
My belief is that after the budget season gets done in October, they'll start releasing rings for 2015, and we'll see it come in 2015. Again, we were talking about, there's another site we have in the not too far from here, and I was talking with the guy from AT&T upstairs, and he said to me, yeah, we know we got to shut that one down too, but we got to get that thing moving as well. So they know, they're chasing Verizon, okay? They've got to have the same coverage that Verizon has. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're all about, it's seamless coverage. Nobody wants to be on their phone and have it drop out, whether it be for data locking up, whether it be on your phone and the call drops. Everybody in this industry is looking for seamless coverage, whether it be small cells, whether it be towers. The desired path for the carriers is to have a tower because you get the height, it's macro coverage, okay? But inside certain buildings, skyscrapers, casinos, things like that, you need to have small cells because the signals from those towers aren't penetrating the buildings, and there's a lot of demand inside those buildings. In stadiums,
That's what I'm interested in, like discussing the three proposals here and what you're looking at. You're the first one that has used the term stealth monopoles. What does that mean? I'm looking at pictures here. I'd like you to really focus in on that.
Sure.
What it would look like here in Radnor Township to address. Up to this point, we have seen some monopoles and things. Now I'm seeing something here with flagpoles. You know, is that a stealth monopole?
A flagpole would be a stealth monopole. That's correct. Okay, and you may have driven by them, may not have even known it, but you can have a flagpole up to 150 feet, and flag will fly. And what happens is that you've got panels that will basically fold back, and the antennas are mounted, flush mounted on a pole inside that flagpole, and the cables run down to the bottom. So, for example, and we'll get to it, that flagpole picture that you have in that last picture up on Eagle Drive, we would run the cables over to the existing building, which was the old horse barn up there, okay? And that building's in disrepair. So the carriers and CTI would be working to, A, repair that building, and then that building would house the electronics for the carriers, okay? So nobody would ever see any wires. You're gonna have all the antennas mounted inside the flagpole, wires will run down the center of the flagpole, underground to the building, and that's where the electronics would tie into it. But we can go into that in a little bit. Any other questions? Okay, also we're offering revenue sharing. And again, we're looking at a 25% revenue share. Applies to all tenants after the second tenant. And again, as I said, with the ground rent that we have, that first tenant will cover expenses. We don't make any money on it. We are not a nonprofit, okay? So that after that second tenant, beginning with that third tenant, there'll be 25% revenue share of whatever the lease revenue is. And that escalates with the tenant leases, which is standard usually 3%. Okay, we would pay that monthly as additional rent. And then again, we follow accounting statements, and the town will have the ability to audit us. Okay. We also would look to give a capital grant, as I mentioned earlier. Our proposal is to give the Parks and Recreation Department an initial grant of $150,000. It'd be $50,000 per site, funded within 60 days of the tower being approved for zoning. Okay, it can be used for parks and recreation needs, other township use, no surprise there. And then upon each renewal of the term, each renewal term, we would give another capital grant of $75,000. So in year 11, you get another 75, and then in year 21, you get another 75,000. Okay, that's the business side of it. We have been in the community, as I said, with the tower that exists. We've also supported the Radnor community. We just recently sponsored the Truck Zoo last week. That's from the Parks and Recreation Department newsletter that went out showing that we sponsored it. We're also sponsoring the Fall Harvest and Great Pumpkin Patch event and the holiday event at the Willows. And last year we sponsored the night at the ballpark. So again, we operate here in town, but it's not a situation where we just come in, take the revenue, we support the town, we support the town's program, and at the end of the day, it's all about the community. And so it's one thing to say, yeah, we have the tower and we're sharing revenue with the town, that's great, but the community doesn't really see that. I mean, that's really pretty much behind the scenes revenue coming into town. We do want to be out there. We'll have our banners there. We have people here. And this way here, we are participating in the community at the events. And Tammy's done a great job. I mean, I work with her on sponsorships, and she's really a delight to work with. Okay, again, back to your question, Ms. Gillen, about the tower designs. We'll work with you guys in terms of what makes the most sense at each location. Every tower company would love to tell you they'll come in here and build a monopole or a self-support tower that's galvanized, and that's the easy hit, okay? You can get that right off the assembly line, you don't have to worry about it. It costs less money than a stealth tower costs, significantly less. But at the end of the day, again, it comes back to the community and what does the community want. There will be no guide towers, and again, we want to talk about, as I said, minimizing the view for the residents, and we'll get the engineering drawings. So if you look at the Ethan Valley Park, and what I can show you here is we had an engineering company come out to the town and take a look at it. Okay, so what we did was, this is the location of the site in the park, okay? And then we took pictures from site 1 and site 2, two different locations. Second location in the park, first location across I-476. And what we do is we put a balloon up there at 150 feet. So we figured the tower is going to be 150 feet. You're not going to go to 200 because that would require it being lit. So we want to minimize, again, the view shed. So there's a tower that's floated up at 150 feet. From there, we do a photo sim, and we said, that's what, if we went with a monopine, that's what the view shed would look like from across 476. If you drive down 476, south of here, down by the Art Museum, there's a stealth tower on the right-hand side. I'm sure you see it regularly, but it's actually a pretty good stealth tower. Looks a lot like this, a little bit more sparsely covered than this would be. But that would be the view shed from across 476.
Okay, one second. That looks a lot like a monopine to me. What's the difference between? Oh, that is a okay, you said stealth tower. Okay. Okay, I thought he had just said that's a stealth tower. Okay.
Stealth could be monopine. It can be a silo. It can be a flagpole. So stealth is just a general term, but that is a monopine. Gotcha. Okay.
Excuse me, if you go back to that, the first one at Ithan Valley, the site location?
Sure.
Yeah, is that, do you have that, is that at the existing parking lot, or is that off the parking lot somewhere?
This is off the parking lot. So you get the parking lot comes down here, and just a little bit of a ways up that path that's pretty much worn out is an area that we were told that would be the location.
And, I'm sorry, and who told you?
A member of the community, Buzz Zinkowski, had one of his people take us out to the 3 locations, and he brought us out there, and we walked up into the woods. from
Okay,
there.
so it was one of the staff
Yeah,
that
it was
took
one
you
of
out
the
there, okay. And can you tell me approximately how far from the parking lot that site is that you were looking at?
100 feet?
100 feet, thank you.
You bet. Okay, so if you look, the site in the park, again, you've got a big canopy already of trees. There's the balloon right there. Okay? So you really can't see that balloon, but it's right up in there. Okay? Go to the next picture. And then there's the monopine right there. So just, again, because of the canopy that's there, you're not really going to see it from the park. When it's a 150-foot tree, again, it all depends upon the view shed. I mean, it's not something that you can just hide at the end of the day.
Can I just ask a question about the branching on the top of the monopine? Are there alternative designs for that, or densities and so forth, that are available? And can you speak to that and what this picture represents?
Yes, there are. There are many different densities that you can have from a monopine. I've seen some that are pretty thin, and that's just a matter of telling the manufacturer what type of coverage that you're looking for, and that would be a maximum coverage monopine. Okay. So at the Willows, we're up there next. You can see the location. The site is here, sits up behind the Willows. There's the mansion. Okay, this is about halfway up the hill. Okay, and the reason why it's halfway up the hill is because, excuse me, you have your residential community back here. If you put that tower up to the top of the hill, you're going to have a view shed you're going to have a view of that tower from the residence. So we looked at it, putting it about halfway up that hill from the mansion. Again, the terrain comes all the way up to about here, where it will be on the incline. Okay, we took 2 views, one from over here, okay, one from over here on the main drag, Darby Paoli Road. So looking at it from location 1, you can see that the balloon at 150 feet, okay, doesn't look like much above that tree line. And then if you insert a monopine at 150 feet to replace that balloon, that's what the view would look like from the road. Okay, and there's the monopine right there. And then from site 2, again, down in the street, just a little bit further up the street, that's the balloon float, and then the view shed looks like that. So again, very, inobtrusive on the skyline from the street, and again, from the back side of it, the residents aren't going to see that as well because it's shielded from the trees that are higher up.
Can you go back to where you want to place that? It looked like it was in the middle of a stand of trees. So what kind of impact are you talking about getting into there with equipment to build that site? How are you going to get there?
That's very difficult. What we've been told when we were a staff member is this area here is conservation land, but he has to check to see where the conservation boundary is. It looks like there's been a road that was put in there, and so our access would come from down here, come this way, we'd come up in here, and then we would have to clear a path to get up into that area, okay? There are a couple paths up there, we'd have to widen them. It would mean cutting back some trees, because you couldn't get a tower in there otherwise.
Okay.
And then you'd need to have a road up to that location, so when the technicians came in on a regular basis to do maintenance or to test it, they'd need to drive to that location?
That's correct. We'd put in a gravel road or something that, again, it's not going to be a paved road, that's for sure. It's just not going to work. But we put a gravel road down, we put, weed abatement underneath that road, and any culverts for the drainage that was needed.
Since it's only 100 feet above where the mansion is and there's parking already at that mansion, is it possible that you could, after you put a tower there, plant trees back in there and there's a path so the maintenance person could walk up there? Do you actually need to have a road to there?
Nope, that actually can be done. Most of the carriers that go up there, if they're going up there, they'll have antennas. They would prefer to drive it, but we have certain locations in our portfolio where it's ATV only or snowmobile only in the wintertime. And again, those companies, they know how to work it, and they'll put a trailer on an ATV and take it up there if they need to. So as long as there was enough room to get an ATV up there, not an issue. But yeah, we'd plant trees back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. And then on page 23 is Eagle Drive. And again, we took a look at two different locations there. One is when you drive in, as you're going down the hill to the playground down here. Good location is right here on the corner. You can put a flagpole up there. Certainly from an aesthetic standpoint, looks nice, public place, flag flying. And the other location would be just as you came in to the road. So you come into the park here, and then opposite here, there's a grassy area, and we put it there. So you're not going to take any parking spaces away. And again, from there, we would then trench over to the building and then put the electronics into that building.
How high would the flagpole be?
How tall would it be?
Yeah, how tall?
Anywhere between 120 and 150 feet. And the reason why we need to go that high is because you've got to get the carriers in there. And they look for maximum coverage. In this day and age, flagpoles that were built at 80 to 100 feet are very tight because some of the carriers are taking 2 rad centers inside the flagpole to get the capacity they need.
So is there less capacity in these flagpoles than
It could be. Again, depends upon how wide the base is and how many antennas we get in. That's why we prefer to go 120 to 150. Okay, and again, they're all going to be flush mounted on the inside. It's a fiberglass panel that sits on top of it, so you don't notice it. It'll be painted white. But that's the reason why you would look at a flagpole. But again, not tied to the flagpole. That's something that we would certainly discuss with everybody here, as well as the township. And if you guys decided that you want to put a pine tree in there, we could put a pine tree in there. I just want to give you a couple different ideas of what we thought would work up there.
How wide? I'm sorry. How wide would this flagpole be?
At the base, about 48 inches.
Okay. And with this, then there's no 50 by 50 foot pad or anything like that because it's all housed in the.
That's correct. So
whatever that is,
again, you would have a minimal footprint there. It'd be probably a 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 pad that the tower would be anchored down to. But after that, you'd have again all the cables run on the inside, and then over to the building.
Could you put that next to the building? Just right next to the building?
We actually looked at that. Mr. Zinkowski had requested that it go on the far side of the building, away from the playground. The problem is that you can't make the setback. If you put a tower on that side, there's a house in very close proximity to that. So could we put it on the next to the building? Possibility. The staff member that we went with said he'd prefer it away from the building. But we could, again, as long as we make the zoning setbacks, we could do that. But
okay.
On the other side of the building, where it's just all grass, you couldn't do it because of the setback.
Realistically, how far could you run the cables from a tower like this underground to the equipment location?
The carriers today, they like it shorter rather than longer. But realistically, you can run them 600-700 feet today because most of the carriers have gone to fiber. All right. So when it was coax, and you were putting into 1 5/8 coax, you'd have degradation and signal loss. With fiber, you don't get that loss, so you can run it out further.
So let me take that a step further. And if we go back to the Willows or Ithan Valley Park, for example, could you put a thinner, 48 inches, I think is what you said, tower up on the hill, and then underground run the cables down to equipment location 100 feet away at the parking lots of either of those locations, and that way you're not disturbing as much up in the hill or in the park where the trees, et cetera, are?
We certainly could if there was space allowed to us for that. When we looked at it, you've got, in behind the mansion, you've got a concrete walkway to a wall, to a retaining wall. And if you were looking down the hill from the tower site, over to the right, you've got generators and trash disposals. So that becomes a little bit tougher to go that area. If there was room made available, looking to the left, going down the hill, we certainly could do that. We're not adverse to that. We could put get a compound in there. And if we had the land, sure. And this way here, destroy fewer trees.
The other thing, put the flagpole by the willows. Put
Just
the
thinking outside the box. just like
put the
that.
pad somewhere else.
I assume this is not, it's a fabric flag? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, some of it's going to be lit, it's going to be up 24 hours a day, someone's going to maintain the flag. Just, again, thinking outside the box.
Right.
Has anyone looked at other alternatives aesthetically other than monochrome trees that look like tinsel trees? The ones I've seen.
Sure.
To blend in nicer, I would rather see a flag that's lit somewhere than some of these things I've seen on the horizon. I'm sorry. Seeing something like that other than some of these, the trees that they're looking at, we're all making the assumption that the tree canopy is going to outlive the tower you're putting in. But face it, these trees are now 30, 40, 50 years old. 10, 15 years down the road, they're not going to be there, so you're going to be left with some structure up there, depending upon how you camouflage it. We've seen some ones earlier where you had tree limbs just at the top 8 feet, 10 feet. I think you were getting to that point.
Right.
That's not what I'm looking at down the road. 10, 15 years, what's going to be left? Just this tower? Is there some thinking?
What about a silo? We can do a silo up there, especially with the community garden.
That blends in
Well,
with what you're doing at the Willows, that if you're telling me the technology is there right now, that you can hide these antennae inside fiberglass, I imagine whatever you want to think about, you can do. It's a function of
Absolutely.
money.
It becomes a concerted effort and a team effort, right? When we came here, we were told these are locations, and we were taken to the locations and were told this is where the tower is proposed to go. We're not locked to that, okay? And if there's a better alternative that we can provide you, we'll work with you on that, whether it be a flagpole down at the Willows. I mean, if you come into the Willows from the left-hand side, let me go back to that picture. Okay, you've got the Willows, the building here, you got the parking lot here, okay? And you actually walk up. Now, it very well could be that do you want flagpole in the parking lot? Maybe. Maybe you want it closer to the building and have a flying. When it comes to flags, your question about a fabric flag, cost, we provide the flags, okay? Now, what we do is we work usually with the municipalities that when the flags get torn, that they've got extra inventory so that a new flag can go up there and be put up. So again, it's something that we do as our cost to just get the flagpole and keep it looking good. Nothing to me looks worse than driving by a flagpole with A, a fade or rip flag, or B, and because that's a very sensitive issue too, but B, a flagpole that's got no flag on. It just looks stupid, and you'll see them driving down the highway any number of times.
Jim raises a good point, though. What about a silo that would be in keeping with
the community farm up there?
With the community farm over there that would, and also at Ithan Valley Park there, is there something that could be more in keeping with, I guess, the whole?
Without a doubt. I mean, I've seen clock towers, I've seen silos, and if a silo worked, like, again, not knowing where the conservation area ends, but let's just assume that this roadway that was at the end of the conservation area, okay, maybe is there enough room to put a silo in up here and make it look like a barn and a silo? That's easy because we put the barn in, that's where all the electronics go.
How tall would that have to
You
be?
put the silo in, and the antennas are all mounted on the inside, and it's nothing more than, like I said, it'd almost be like going by a church steeple that has antennas on the inside. You wouldn't know it, and it would be the same thing. You'd see a building up there with a silo.
And is your company willing to discuss those alternatives in keeping with the monetary proposal that you put together, or is that going to change that?
Nope, without question. The one thing, again, not having my lawyers here and my posse.
We're just asking questions, so.
A-okay, but I'm the CEO and I get to make the decisions.
Oh, there you go, I like that.
And so when it comes to the decisions for my company, they rest here. So again, to that point, we were guided to the different locations, and we're given some guidance in terms of, you know, they want the view shed to look good. If it's going to be up the hill up here, you're not going to put a silo up there, obviously.
No.
And a monopine would look good. But if the township and the recreation department had other land that could work, and whether it be a flagpole, whether it be a silo or something else, we certainly would work with you guys on that and would commit to that based upon an agreement with the town.
And the silo would still have to be the same height, correct? Or
It depends upon the location, okay? Because up here, you got to get past the trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you got to remember, the terrain all falls off down this way, okay? So if you're putting a silo in down here, I would, if I had my preference,
yeah.
I'd want something right in here, because this way here, I got this clearing back here, a little bit that will feed these homes back here and give them coverage, okay? What you don't want to do is you don't want to end up in a situation where you're putting a tower in here and not getting your residents back here coverage, because then they're going to want coverage and you're going to end up putting another tower in somewhere.
That's
so
still Radnor
we want to optimize the coverage in the area.
Still Radnor Township.
I just Googled silo on my phone. It's pretty obtrusive looking.
Well, that's just a bad picture. No,
Could be.
it could
I'm
be,
just
yeah,
saying.
absolutely.
Are the antennas on the outside of that silo or the inside?
It looks like they're on the inside, but
Okay.
I mean, it's tall.
Right.
Isn't that giant flag off the turnpike? If you go east on the turnpike, isn't there a giant American flag that's on a flagpole that's a tower? Just to get an idea if anybody's driving up that way.
Could be.
You know the one I'm talking about though, John? That's a cell tower too, right? Yeah, so an idea for anybody who wants to see it.
I have a question, and I've asked all the your two companies before you. Do you have like a ranking of which of these three are sort of the most desirable, I guess, in any way?
In terms of the locations?
In terms of what you want to build, and let's say we were going to just decide to approve one site. How would you rank the sites as ones you would want to put them on?
From my business perspective?
Yes.
Ithan Park, number one, because that tower is going to feed 476, and everybody wants to make sure that there's seamless coverage along 476. So that would be the one that's going to get big-time business. Willows, you got no coverage up here, and this whole road coming down here with AT&T, I just kept dropping all the time. I mean, that's why AT&T is in here, let's face it. I mean, they're coming in because they need their coverage and they want to build towers. So at the end of the day, this one is probably a close second. And yet, even the third one, you've got the university across the street. So, you know, you got to always be thinking about what constituency you're trying to serve as well. But that's the way I would rank them. No, that's all right.
Presentation.
That's pretty much it. I mean, you had a lot on, I'm sure, data in terms of coverage. I can come in and tell you, you need wireless coverage in this town. Nothing that you haven't heard, nothing that you don't know. We have a relationship with the town. We already have the tower here. We've negotiated a ground lease with the tower, with the town. So now it's a matter of trying to figure out what serves you guys best from constituency standpoint, from Parks and Recreation Department, and then, you know, at the end of the day, a business deal is a business deal. Can you get aggressive? You know, again, at what point do you say, okay, well, the business deal trumps everything else, or does it? And, you know, I don't necessarily think in this community, well, I know the business deals are usually very tough to cut, okay? But in this community, the business deals don't drive it. I mean, you've got a constituency, you've got a beautiful town, and making sure the aesthetics are.
That brings up my last question, Tony. I've asked the other presenters too. You mentioned Vermont's a real difficult community to deal with. How's your company, have they ever encountered questions about electromagnetic fields coming from these towers and the whole health issue surrounding
Yeah, I mean,
cell towers?
We get them everywhere we go, okay? And usually we get them when we're proposing to build a tower at a school.
Okay.
And first of all, be reminded that my company doesn't transmit any RF at all, okay? We just own the steel, and the carriers transmit the RF, and they have to comply with all FCC regulations. Now, that stated, the transmission of the RF off the towers, and there are studies that have been shown that you get less RF transmission off a tower on the ground level if the towers, if the antennas are 100 feet than you would from your microwave. So it's really not a health issue per se. It's always a question. People will always be concerned about it. The flip side of that is, when I started in this business years ago, getting towers at a school, almost impossible. Just flat out not going to happen. After Columbine, it became a lot easier because every parent wanted to make sure that their kids, if they were at school, they had a way to get in touch with them. And now you're seeing towers show up at schools that will be part of a stadium, part of a ball field, and they'll build the lights. The wireless company will build the lights and put the carriers on the different light stanchions. And this way here, they may not have 4 carriers on one pole, but you'll get 1 on each. And this way here, they all have pretty much the same height going across. You see that a lot in California, for example. You go to Napa Valley, every stadium has wireless carriers on the stadium lights because, again, Napa Valley, tough place to do business with, tough place to zone. So when you talk about RF, the answer is all the studies that have been shown say that they do not impact people to any level that would cause anything to be concerned about or any health issues. The carriers are forced to comply with FCC regulations, and they do that. So again, we provide the infrastructure, they provide the signal and the transmissions, and they've got to comply with all the FCC regulations and licenses as well.
Any other questions? Any public participation? We're good. It wouldn't be right if you didn't participate. Come on, Sarah. Come on, you're killing us.
No. Do you have a picture of what a silo looks like?
I can certainly provide one.
Because I haven't got a clue what it looks like. I mean, how big a diameter is a silo?
The building itself would be probably a 20 by 50 building or 50 by 50 because you've got to be able to get the multiple carriers and their electronics into that building. Okay,
Would your pad be, would it be
There would be no pad then.
50 by 50-foot pad with the building taking up the whole 50 by 50?
And that would be the building. Then you'd have a silo next to that building, okay? And the silo in and of itself would be approximately 6 feet wide, okay? And up to the top. And
Okay, so it's a 50 by 50-foot building with a silo on the end of it.
Correct.
Well, it's the same as a 50 by 50 foot pad. You just put a building, make it look like a barn or something. And then maybe we can get some storage in there for the community farm or something.
Not a selling point.
Just trying to think outside the box for you. All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're quite welcome.
And we got a lot to digest.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks.
having me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're quite welcome. Would it, if I sent you guys pictures of silos and other stealth towers, I mean, I can certainly send those, clock towers and everything else. So this way here you get an idea to think about it. Okay, great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Are we going or are we done?